Adesima mamu nyina chi mamu akwaba eba United Television so ene July 18th 2026 ene memere da mu nyina asesa wudu bafide na to ha dwumede ni din critical issue midin de Agya Kwabena ye ne mutina fisa bra kopem se ebebo edu ba ku na ena no pe me kai wo se special ice kura yemu awo dwumede mu sanso ena nitfufo nitabekwan so kura yemu ena fe almighty this way chocolate drink ene ne coffee drink so ebu echidoma enye asankwetu akra ena bedwafo betena se ebedi nkomo achichira akeka eso wano na yuka sa na tie freedom of speech eti say yaka freedom of speech a eden na chira nkasa ebedi ho nkomo nsam ni bi ne kamu no ana se anka ebetumi aka no kwa foforo so ana ebetu aka bibi epe bia na yekọ ni nyina nko obedi nene anopa yi na yahwe sa bible akasa o se to wano nareka nti sanso na bible kan no na wo pa kire sen ankasa sanso ena ye tribuna yanda na di ehun sam ayedigya no eno so ye behwe na ye di ho nkomo ne bisasa nye bia sa tribuna ye a wo mudi abai ebebuani se beboan so a adenti na ebinumu esoritia na se moan so a adenti ena ebinum so ni abrese eno ana ekoi eno ye nsebia no pei ye bedi eho enkomo ne nsama hodo a megidi se won so pese obetibi na ye bekọ MPP amayoku no mu enso menti mo hase ba ko mienu nsebia soro wo mu no so eno so na no pei ye behwe na ye di eno so ho enkomo na yakeka ne amadi asi ani na fe ye se na ye kwa no aha nti ene eye koma ibedi yebeka ho asempa sanse asemhia na mo no ansa na ene yebehye dwumadi ase no aya mekasa kakra ansa na ya shase na sebjo fatina se ese papa so pa homa so enye no mudentra na so ye munti enese nanum na ene de na mo ne ye munti na ya otaka se ebienya ho kwa betena ha nyenye se ebia ye no se de ye ne bia keke na mumu no ye ka na panyifo etu womani ada so omodo mani akọ na ene ansa na meka masem no mekwa homa no so sisi na mini onunyamfo adwumadu antwi edin komo kakra efa tribuna ya ehun sam baaye no oka abedwaku a ehwe mra ene enema hodo so mrapon ene constitution mrapon no abedwaku wo mrachebedwa wo hwe ho ensam ka no o ka ho bi na yebisa no nsa ba ko menu mi nsa bi fanfa tribuna ya ban de aba minority walk out wo sorry film na sebedwam no yebisa se ho sam etise na bran pacho machi
ya odro mini abema
ya pom ti say
e ho adom boko
mi hu wachi o
e ho adom ya on five on tie ho ya
de radio asipa anopedi e fwa enye bone ni nyina afa de si omna sebedwam ko bai se tribuna aban ade aba no mo se mo ne aban no enya adwene obi ote akire a wonim de ekọ no ebebisa se na minority kura pa akire se ade pa ene mo hako
yo me da se mi na be ma de wo mo ne se o ye mra she be ne a onuma edos ona ojina ho consistency ne na to aba mount na nso ya to aba mount se the year emra emagan and nema especially any opposition crowd say a hold the government in check emra bia ni ho amode pa na eya obi beka se me pega na yi nti me de metwen afan de ye kan nyina ne se emra no eto sin kakra yidi kai no history a walk on and say soja ban yakomo bebree na soja ban baako a nka se twafo ɛyɛ AFR ɛna three PND ɛbae PND yɛkyerɛ na yɛkɔɔ constitutional ruler NDC ɛbɛdi anim na soja ban no mu ɛyɛ AFRC ne PNDC brɛ no ɛna ɔmo kɔfa tribunal system ɛbae ɛmi sɛ mekaeɛ a I think PNDC no 78 or something ɛna the public tribunal na ɛbae tribunal yɛ a ɔmo de ɛfa sesei no nsonsonoe biara ni ɛne deɛ ne wɔ hɔ kane no attorney general no ade ne members of bae no wohwɛ yɛ constitution no a article 106 ɛka sɛ ansa na obi de mmara bɛba mmarahyɛbadwamu a ma yɛayɛ ɛho adwuma onipa no a ɔde mmara ba no ɛsɛ sɛ ɔhwɛ mmara no adeɛ bɛɛ na ɛreba abɛyɛ obroni bɛka sɛ what meets you is the bill seeking to cure na kyerɛ sɛ problem bɛɛ na ɛwɔ ɔman no mu a bill no ɛreba abɛsɔ attorney general deɛ a ɔde baeɛ ne sɛ yɛwɔ backlog of cases na yɛne ne nya adwene kyerɛ sɛ backlog of cases no deɛ wobɛtumi ayɛ ne sɛ wobɛbie court no bi aka ho a ɛyɛ civil court yɛwɔ district court yɛwɔ circuit court yɛwɔ high court yɛwɔ court of appeal yɛwɔ supreme court ɛno koraa ba ho a yɛwɔ specialized court like the family court ne nneɛma bebree ɛwɔ hɔ nti no saa tribunal yɛ ɔmo de bɛyɛ the only thing ɛka mu ɛyɛ 1992 constitution ɛna ɛka regional tribunal ho asɛm na regional tribunal the fact that constitution no recognize no doesn't mean that we have to pay a kobrɔfododo ɛsɛ sɛ yɛfan wo wei no foforɔ nti no yɛka ɛho asɛm sɛ deɛ ɛdi kan no tribunal system no ɛbɛdi ghanafoɔ dream paa ɛgya sɛ wobɛkaeɛ a ɛberɛ a yɛyɛ reconciliation committee no ɛnsɛm bebree ne pie mu ɛwɔ regional tribunal nsɛm no yɛde w'asɛm kɔ a ɛda no agora yɛmidi w'asɛm no nnipa no ka sɛ me na nnipa no magye no yɛ sɛ kwado wei deɛ de abɔ no a ɛsɛ sɛ hɔ a yɛbie ne yɛde wokɔ baabi a ɛde wobɛkɔ na ɛno na megye di sɛ ndc aman sɛ sɛ ɔmo na akɔfa mu mema gye mu no the only thing ama ɔmo ɛka wei ne nyɛ sɛ ɛyɛ na ɛbɛboa ghana na mmom no the only reason a ɔmo ka ne sɛ ɔmo ka no ɔmo campaign ne ɔmo manifesto mu sɛ ɔmo ba ɔmo de tribunal bɛba nti ɔmo gye di sɛ ghanafoɔ egyina aso na ɛtɔ aba ma ɔmo nti ɛsɛ ɔmo yɛ deɛ ghanafoɔ ɛmoa yɛn bill na ɔde baeɛ no memorandum na ɔka ɛho asɛm no nyinaa no memorandum no ka sɛ the past no tribunal no amoa ghanafoɔ na mmom ɛkwan a yɛbɛfa so a yɛbɛsiesie no ɛbi ɛdeɛ nti na mmoa sɛ ɛnaa na ɔde ɛbaeɛ a yɛsɔre free parliament no yɛyɛɛ ho ntontoni ade no clause 4 of the bill no ɛkyerɛ sɛ this bill this clause establishes the regional tribunal and the district tribunal wotumi nkɔfa mmara wei ɛmɛkriti a body like this says judicial system especially district tribunal sɛ okriti by an act of parliament ɛberɛ constitution no unrecognized ɛno ne yɛka ho nsɛm a na ɔmo wɔ dana na ndc foɔ ɛwɔ hɔ no mu a yɛka law no na ɔmo yɛ bɛɛ 23 ɔwɔra yaregya se ɔkɔ suspension menim sɛ leadership ɛna ɛkɔ discard deɛ ɔkɔyɛ yɛ ane sɛ owura dɛm no ɛna ɔkɔ prɛprɛ ndc foɔ no nyinaa sɛ 3 lines obiara mmra nyɛ obiara ne baeɛ deɛ nanso so dodbɔ no abae a ɔmo nyaa nnipa bɛɛ 113 from 23 Not just any the oil yarn say the number a becon a day at the uncle. Am I here? Nano of my ship is the most a yet denara a damo of a party. Bill. Tribunal system in the past said they no me no him. A panel near San and it's not so. Panel members near San almost transfer. Chairman on one a lawyer. And yet, Sabi, lawyer from one tribune and Yansawo. And he a war, at the committee level, a proposal that almost the now pass here, the first almost pass here. As I said, a department of people were university, or for higher education, will be a diploma, at district level, and then regional tribunal, there will be free. Some of the report number is the Omoka say ordinary is ordinary. In the survey, and previous. The Nipano, me omura class 1 demo prada nebe efefe ye fanwa efefe president ni appointed on man better awe nye job for the boys a di nti na sabria obi call law school ko tian and you no na obi so de ono onyere hwe o metna so ye twem eko ye di na de arahotema o mu say panel of 3 no nipa me no majority decision and the yeluma enti mienu no a enye lawyer for na omo nim emra no se omo mienu kwafa se de omo ho ye yia the operator ni ehia ono ombebua na obi a o proceed na ono ba bebua wasem na omo mienu bi a makambo mu de majority judgment no probe na watre nipa no kura no oba ajepe ebi kura no interpreter na o interpret to accused person until the airport no oh here panel member for the interpret to no enwako niama basa ebi ni say they should do day to day here me hunu Agya Kwabena 31 years near me be a member a lawyer me be a member of the bar association me hunu da say ya emra ame ya cafe ye share judiciary say case is ba omanimu a it should be day to day say and a transfer or say a transfer ade say a transfer emra be no administratively meaning say o court wa e bi betimi judge bi betimi ata say asemi say court and then na mi e bi na see wo ADC candidate the honor deputy finance minister in security ABC or ABC before something. Judge don't make me administratively action. Tell me what is making me say. Now for him rat the judge, editor lawyer for editor we inquire the tribunal nipa me sign better na say me na say. Edward Amotna say na there some transfer kwa there some transfer ya wa there some transfer. Basa. Ebi so me say case no wo ho. Na bia me ye no my application. Ya accuse me. My application say the akrata me de ba court no almost so many into court no tribunal no so many into now to know the money into the mayor and one piece na mra kwa so no mati omo de ahye mu say ye de case no court tribunal and say so be aye appeal and omo de ahye say tribunal for no be mining case eyen say obeka say galamsey akosoro enti wo hwese galamsey wo de wo ibesi ano na so na ne kwan no abai na wi aye ntwan na galamsey koso anopa wie numre baby a gana na atu asiti men ka se galamsey o mo baaye na abawo na mu mbe de o mo sitan fe MPP kwan declare state of emergency ewo galamsey no mo baaye na aye kese no ya dia hadi enye mbra wi na o de be pa boye enti me de ene me ye fam no ya de ne se omo ye se de omo be pa NDC fo e de aku ho no ma mo maduma ye de be kan se job for the boys me free se me be ye me san se me 31 years abeba na minimum an se Ghana Bar Association and they de omo kofa bar society and as Ghana society, whatever, predominantly NDC for association. And NDC for bar here, which is Ghana Bar Association from what team Akotane, na Ghana Bar Association, Nipa Bakupe, and award blue. And I can't so no one association Bar Association of Ghana and Ghana Bar Association. I paid the Martin Law Society are NDC for anything. And here no, and I'm beginning to say, Omupa, and the appointment, and yet the other one of my yes, seminal, Ebino. But here, Yamea the one, and Joada, they could see a better contract for near the end seminar upon Yamadana for himself, and someone yet. Yes, sir, it will be a good.
All right.
Now, name Blemu, Machibia for home in Blemu, I got Blemu. Anybody be bring Ghana for a back Emma and Tiponia to test majority or what it did to Maui. They can be a Abai, it will be Abai, the honor.
Honorable, may I share Amrano Tribuna Bresso, a bra or Modi Tribuna by now a Asra for Amemum and this answer and by and now me no say Kabi Mami Kabi and Yedi Juma. Into a pioneer, your fast so at the year Asra for Mamu near Mano. Yet the back of Mikabi Amamu near Mamu, and as I see more, and yet they bet me a ye.
You are done.
A dinner does set tribunal no, and na a beer, Musu say, and and now say composition of Nipana, what the Adorable Cotuano, the son say, or lawyer ni Unimumra. One way Kahono sono, yes, Shamran say. Yama sabi obi a onimu mrampo no a cheche watumi ate asesa de ye jury no se asebi ba jury no nye lawyer ni na so no ye ma de kwan ama ne betie nsem no na ye de sabi efie nyansa enso atoto ho ahwe se ase woni pa yi kan no emra ene efie nyansa de kabo mu a ekọ ne san ni aye no bia ne wei a no nti no sanka ba betumi aboama atemo na tumi akosan se nananum ahefo dodo no aye pagifo dodo na wo nkurase ene mi ahodo bebre no mu ko school but to be di asam ama tentere tumi ya adwuma
yo me no nya na de wo ka no be mu dia anke be ka se tukura no a ya tie no ne enka argument ni ki mu court na yema na nanom nko ani ate Nanano Mudiasem, Nananum Omni Medaki. Nanano Mudiasem, Nananum Omni Arm Robbery Case. Engineer Mebia, Yede, Egese, Yede, Etier, Asema, Ebekaniki. Nanano Mudiasem, Pahase, family issues. Awarisem, Masem, Awasem, Nanano Mudi, and Hasem. Ye will family tribunal for this. But our tribunal will come once a week. Oh, jury system, the jury system now, the judge determines matters of law. And yet the law is not common sense. If you are a lawyer, need to be a prejudice. Say you have law no better and change. Now you see a fear admin the become BBR. There are matters as I said the Embrani Yetuman and not necessarily a Yetuman. Obia Portman Demosia and Uma in here. Said the Obama Society no apostle, no and noir, BBC Obeba, and San Oba Bay agent, Obey 3. And San Obey district court judge, and I just want practices 3 years. And San Obey second court judge, this was practices 6 years. And San Obey, high court judge, a series of 10 years. Court of Appeal 12 years. Supreme Court. 15 years minimum and sana what near bay. Nina ye training any part of the young say Asemba on to Tompapa. Any party were doing Ghana say Sabi in previous judiciary no a be a share project and I'm near maybe a day a bra a chum meaning said the Obekaya and but you did not qua and ye na M1 tribunal system no buy public tribunal system no buy you will be say tribunal no while you want more now what's the more career is looking for Emrebi no one over there. They say Omo even some of the tribunal system no Omo ane chairman ebi abeye MP etwem ebi da so ye MP na said ye kan emrai a ye hihye womo no ye course no omo experience omo ne ehye in jury system no omo ordinary people determine matters of fact and yet matters of law. And then the judge would determine matters of law. And sana jury no be to any judge no be trust. Wait. Name mo martin ya mo say factually no say ne here dia. Monka say odipo. Factually no mo say ya monka say odi person. And then bremu dey say ne here. Enti Agya Kwabena me say that way ebeboa Ghana.
And some bia ne de bako ju sa tribunal ye anim nsam ben nsem bia tumi ko hu bia na say there are specific nsem bi ne de bako so omo hwe nka ho asem
criminal we dey why ne say criminal case enti de authority na na dream be ye say memfa mfa ha bia no de beko but mainly no emrem no mo kan say salamse issues ebeko mining issues but no na ye kan say they say no your judicial committee some raise fan created a big creative tribunal committee, which is going to run parallel to that. Now, then they must as well say the judicial system, they don't believe in this, they must collapse it. That by year, the chance of Mobile change, chief justice, or that by year, the time say, British for penny for me, you almost, a soldier for penny for me, you almost. A by year, the chance of the tribunal, but ban over the body. Show my men say revolution no ye twem ye ko ya ye emra eboa Ghana bo nti wo mu tu wo kwat no mu tie break no mu ni revolution mentality no influence revolution a lot of people supported it at the time because probably we needed it but some people support you in amwa enyema ekọ ye ni atrocities ekọ so no amwa nipa wu yehwere omunka ani ade no amoa enti ndc abai tie Ghana po a se de mestre di se ye radio mahama wa ba tie 9 no wa ba ni tie 9 so bi no so this is time what say oja legacy emra menye ma won hwe no amfa ni nsa ancha tie ebi ni LGBTQ ensemia ebaye Ghana po ejina ape enso so benim up to now, prepare on fan in such as a beer or reason here on fan in Santa and Chassis. Ora Kupado Preso, a Kupado and Fanessa and Chassis. Yes, I know what they pay. Ubi Tam not the no court, Sam Rawi and Faunsa and Chassis. So when here, a beer, a futua, a beer, a bit here, the responsible opposition is a beer. Yabeko court. Now you are restraining. President to go out on the establish Lambraya.
Auntie, wait, ye do this and answer the Agya Kwabena Kokran, honorable and you may do entry. Say, ye can't say ye chichere or mine, na ye share and Mrasan Bam and bit to me a Juma. Okay, be say, ye share judicial Rumukina, said the Bay a Bebwama in some who the backlog near Kanwasamono. You bet you near this answer bringing on 10.
Yeah.
Now, when to be and support to Sanshi no.
Best support to say more ever more courts or specialized courts. Chief Justice with me I saw and money a paper. But backlog of cases no. And I'm saying we call court to back. Now me jump for court in now Sabi any part or now, oh, you know, say our court system might be over. Lawyer for name, judge, now you will Ababa will be another movie or yes, no grandpa secretary. And in support them one baby, no about you. Now they become who you know many and you say, if I'm not to say or 2 sentences are just a lawyer for no correct. And then no dragging judge, you know, say, on content. And see, there are 1,001 reasons judicial system no the case is required intimate and content. Judge no dey was here no obey obegulu ne mo ni de o tra ma na to ni pa se o hwe na card ni to be a long hand bi na o train no grapher secretary obeba ho there is a training ne de mama ba wa na te no a ye mfa ma o na judicial system no enko ne a nipa bebre backlog of cases no the lawyer ni a o ye case two lawyers na most of the time o mo work case baako etu kwan ne case na amaso judge yarechna case na amaso lawyer baako wo case foforo wo court of appeal or supreme court wa three letter ba amaso wenum nyina ema cases delay but o for tribunal system no mo ye miensa delay no be more because the delay will be multiplied by 3 because ono so ye nipa panel member betimi ayare chairman betimi atukwan the other panel member betimi anyaye a otimi ma no delays now mo kano enye ade a we betimi abo delays na manago the solution is a create specialized court or more court to die be free over to fadwa and what you see court to die be free me be free enti me ami ko mu kono mo pra there is a high court of equal the say yeah fa dipa so mo intention is o mo be fa o mo nkro kra no aye ndi ko mo fa bi ne mo ko under the system that the judicial system me wo no and manage wo and no ye ho beto ye ndi nya dida so
ona be da asia no pe ne wo mre enim sa fe na mo se mutu hana monti no yakopon ya do badwada de be sibia no ye be san wadi honkomo be ya da se pe ne wo mre na no pe ye da se papa honorable anyimadu antwi ne ne di nkomo fa tribunal hyehyɛ ya aban dia ba no wɔka nsɛm hodo bebre ne ye boy homodin sɛ ye bɛkɔ donkɛse no so afa na ye di nkomo na wo mo so de wo ye ti a wo mo ka ne doubt sɛ na buru ne bɛka no minority no ɛwɔ sa tribunal system yi ho no ye ne wo madi ho nkomo ahwɛ sɛ esa na te senso nunyafo nyimadu ka sɛ bi sɛ wo hu ne sɛ ade a wo mo fa NDC fo na akwakoguo adwen no sɛ NDC fo pɛ wo mo ti court na se tribunal o mo krofo nkwa de begu ho ana we yensem bi a bebrepam no ye bedi ho enkomo nti we de mo ntwen ye na ye ntwen ho tiewa ye ba ye beto a enkomo Awia yekoya ya ba hedamasepa ne momre ye beto enkomotwehwe no esoa ne sana na no pay mabedwafo no mse awonti ebia nsore ntem na so ebia be kamisa ha be hyase na yedi enkomo na fi yehwe kwansen sabeka ya sompa na fi kwesi bohweginia onba na yeto enkomotwehwe no so na so sabra meka say die Dr. Frederick Ntiamwa oka this communication team no sen lecture or University of Ghana abeka mensa na no na me be hyase di enkomo na fi no achi no wo maka na beka ho a na yato aso enti sane be no Dr. Kwaba
yeja
bibia boko radiasi
amigidi sa onso ho ye
radio me ho ye papa radio me ho ye pa na no pay utie Dr. Edimadu Antwi ko twetwe ne twetwe ye e fa sa tribunal yi ene ho ensamsam utie na say one okwan a ban fa so de tribunal system no bae no kra no I say sinto bibri e wo ho I say a campaign promise I say mo yes de be ya mo de ndisi fo be kokugu na mo de atata nkrofo je say e ho sam no waka ne bibri ne say ifum so bibri e na wo sa tribunal system amuso mo de ye be ho obi bebi say den na motivate mu ti amode san hye yi eba na den na mo pese mo achieve enu ti mo de sa tribunal system yi be
eja anopa memfa ofidi kase yi so eye UTV na menchia ohwefo nyina na Ghana mabunu sa bibia menya akwanya de meka ne se mabunu no ye ne betimi aye adwumaden ne age Ghana asi ho na Ghana nso abaye krabehwe mechia mikromofo migidi sa anopa omo hwe me eye twufo atimokwa constituency na mabunu bi asori wo ho aja omo ye adwumasom sronko amse ye behwe anka charity de eye sebi omo wo bi NGOs ni ade nanso ukọ twufatimokwa mabunu kuo asori eye Maria Empire na Maria Charity Organization o ma sorry a de omo ye ne se mabunu te se sebi ye ne a adwuma mpo ne yenya bi nyeye ba ye keka ye nsase a no mo de akọ community bi a sebi komunya nchense ba akubi e de ye community we bi a development anka be boa o mo no makoso o masene e bi a enkwara bi a ye hu se school sem eba akade nkitinkiti bi o ho munni no na saa emrante ni maba wai akeka o mo nsase nti anopei megidi se de o ma sha ase no se emabunu bebre sua Ghana no ye betimi akoyanim nti mechia ye pani a oda no ye Maria Empire pani oda no anopei for dwumasom sonkom mo ye na eja say question awabusa me no de meka ne say eja ade aye no ewo mramu anase ni mramu se de ye wo mramu dia ene na nipa ba akofo adwen kire say ono de nka osusu se enisi eye ne saa no yebetie wono ana yebehwe de mra no mamra constitution no aka ana se ya tro wo mu dada mamemfa wonko akiri kakra saa tribunal asemi enye nne na yebeti din enye omampanyi John Dramani Mahama any first person a obeka asem we ana se odi saa enhyehyeye we a yedi bu ana se yede ema enipa nya periperi ye wo mramu eba from 1981-82 ena saa mra we ehya ase saa time no Ghana for bebrea na saa time mo ebiti ase ebi nti ase no agidi say the way a saa tribunal no public tribunal no especially at the community level no omo hwe so eye omo nyuma no na akoye se omo de tata nipa bi a na ewo aban fufuro bi mu ana se ewo amanyoko bi mu enti edu ba bi no ye bedu 92 no ye tro ye constitution ni biom ye sign the be shemu but this time no de kan ye ne say sa tribunal no eba community level na enam enyema bi e course so ye gidi sa entwa ye enti no ye yi ho na free mu enti hwe ye constitution 1992 constitution a ye tro na ye ka say eba the court system na yewo the high court and I say yewo the supreme court. Na wako appeals, no wako high court. Yebobo ya ba regional and district what tribunal and other local way, which means say eba yemre mu a ewo mu say osi yenya baabi a etesa ye dibedi asem. Yenhwe 2002 omampanyin kofo 2001 obefa Ghana akonya. Oba ye no did a friend fast track court by eja omampanyin di fast track court eba no ensem bebre na sorry to say eni bebre kaseti ai bebre ye say ade ya ode be ye gidi say mo Ghana for but na ye hwe enipa dodo no say de besi bi aboa o because eba ye no ene ya ye kasa yeja ye sign fast track court na abeka wo abeka bebre ho mo nim say ene no ukotema yewo Meridian Land Court ene omukoso di nsase sem fast track court mu ne free buy judicial service no adopt ye say ye gidi say sa etirimu pone hunhuma na tie fast track court echi ye didi asem wano 10 no sa niam no say ye koso de kan ye judiciary ne ho ebeboa nti yewo land court wotema yewo financial and economic crime court uko ye court kese mu ho no ma yewo baabi a ye didi sa niam no ho no yewo commercial court ni nyina no ye nya free sa fast track court ye ba 2002 ye di edi sa abandada NDC mpanyumfo bebre including yene ayewura chachukata mu nyina ekogu prison no eye sa niam no mu ne free buy nti omo ka se ye trimupo se sa court enye nti say ye call back to tribunal mete say bi mu ka say you should expunge it not just say akoye te say eja akora wa ko square ma textbook na wa bafie na onu akuma bi afa na wa drodro ma na odi ko school ya sam assignment a odi come teacher na wo hwe mfimfini ho no na asenye na ose masom say number 2 sa na bi mu gidi say constitution am say textbook bi a enkora bi adi magro mu ma yefinti yentum free constitution ni kramo. But why are we doing this? Ene mi wo obi a nasem wo court mami modi nasem wo court no na o senka ye frɛ asem no mei okoye ye se judge a wote asem no so no nana anasa eja ya promoting no enti ye recruiting new judges a omo be ko under training and sana
that's a normal free
ya frasem no ya postpone enye ono nko awo but which means say some cases are judges etna so ni nyina enti say imagine say obi ede ye criminal case ya remand na which means nipa ne beda remand sa kopim say ye be recruiting new judges on be fill that portfolio ye de omako training na o say ye de omako ansa na ye de omaba sa court ya eye vacant no na sa nipa no justice no ye de man na say ye mfama no uti attorney general asem o kan ya o say de nti a tribunal na ba ne say wo hwe ye local court na cases no achoki wo ho cases achoki because local court untimi share judge say within a certain month no say o ma me verdict but with the tribunal system no timelines kakra bi wo ma e say empanyumfo a ye yi omo mada no omo de timeline ye adwuma but the normal court untimi country obi say asem we dey make sure say next week we be close asem no every day ye omo the new way beba to prolong asem na for years sometimes obi at the prison and there ye ka say obi dance anwam for so many years ye ndi na asem adenti na ye ndi na asem because yes cases bebre wo ho no mo che ye hwe ebi emergency ebi ye sa nipa no ye musa ye ho se atentre ne aye ka ho asem ne wanya bi sa nipa no nya ne fa ho de ne ye tietia so nti se kwan bi wo ho ne ebetimi am make sure say sa niema we nyina no ye betimi asisi ano kwan because se eba enye NDC for nkwa na eba ma ye eja fast track court ba ye no sa amre ni mu no eye NDC aban mu aban na etwam a eye yura JJ Rollins oye wonya ne ba bi ko ye mampanyin dada no na ban e wo so ani mu mpanyimfo na sa time o mampanyin kofo ba ye no because of that establishment of fast track court in internet bebre ohonuma because of debra no madi no masom o man intino na o se yetimi de o mo fa sa amra ni mu anya ye bebre de anya nipa bebre de babusa se ene no sa adoption of land court, adoption of economic crime court, adoption of sa commercial court na ye no ene no MPP fo nkwa ne ko ho ene no NDC fo nkwa ne ko enye timamufo a omo won sase ho nsem timamufo omo odwadie ho nsem timamufo omo gidi se dream bi ni niam bi anko ya mom no de omo asem ko ho me edi mom
wo kan se mi onu nyafo ni wan kan se bi se emrana nkasa no sinto ahodo bebre wo na osan ka se wo mo de omo susu se se ye be ye tribunal court tribunal system ne de udi ni kura makrofo yam hihye omo sense nipa bebre na course atibia ni mu a na enhye da emwa enti no ye nhye court na ho no mu kena niema hodo a court na hodo egbo mu hia na yemfa ma omo na mo no mtum ni odwuma tenta for instance for example be about ye real work court say judge ye what type of type or say oyi agi say lawyer for no ko hwemu say it's no why correction and sana it is after na na ye ma mu training na ye ma wo mu humahia nkosoro na mo nya adwuma na say ye ba kokote court for kra o sa ka bibi so fa ho say lawyer ni na chi no nipa susu say so mo don ba de so bi a eka atemuafo no ho no esese obi a na hwekwa akọ university awi enyo obi a kekene se ekofa no
okay
na wo bebe eye chese se nipa mienu no ebi nipa mienu ebe ka lawyer na obeye pani no ho no ebi na obi se da nimu mra obi onimu mra no obeka de ope bi a no obi akotu wo bra nse edu nipa enti no wo mu loopholes bebre wo mu a wo susu se mad ye ni wie peyo
Agya Kwabena say menene nyadwen na megidi say so a lawyer na say obusa na asem say what about the jury system a jury say ye fa nipa bi asabi o man ko entity e wo mramu na ye de o ka ye normal court hu say asem we dey criminal case we o say sa empanyimfo itina se no mo nso e de o mo nyansa ne nimde ene niema kakra o mo asua no edi bua se asem we ye gidi se ekwa ha ene ye tie fa we no enkwa ha no mo na oka bibi se no de enye problem na wo wi a judge na ote akunya mo no na ye the final authority say tribunal bill no nkan eja se wa kan dia mame kan ba bi kakra na ye nyina ye nhwa ade say about 36 pages there me wono o kan ohe clause 7 to 14 na under summary no omatro bibi say the regional and district tribunal no spells out the composition of the regional tribunal to consist of the chief justice, one chairman and other persons who may be designated by the chief justice to sit as panel members. A panel of regional tribunal consists of the chairman and not less than 2 other panel members. Na ubema yesi yawo chief justice no ka eba regional tribunal na chief justice timbi. Chief justice no besa appointee obi a ono na be the chairman. But yen ko qualification of the chairman na oka committee ni ho no say de be ya ebe hu say ampa say de ye no ye de toto ye mamra eni de mra ye di bu o man dada na ye buso ana ye muso because we could do normal court one court to judge oba court to judge o hono mu a on na the final even after the jury no dey omo way aba but oba ha no ma oba be hu say nipa o qualify say ye de ni be ya chairman no se ba regional tribunal na yes e obi a so otimi qualify say obey a justice of a high court enti obi akeke o say ye kofa sebi tibo nkoso bia na because yes NDC na waso ntini akofa da bi ohwe a emra na nkasa no the bill no specify nipa or qualified to be a chairman of a regional tribunal which is somebody ohwe ne qualification or you be a yetimi power ne say o may justice of what a high court justice of a high court na Agya Kwabena eyobi a wanko school eyobi a wanye law ntete ewrade ade na MPP ma ye bresa you see sometimes enema bi wo hono ma ye tum futrogu Ghana fo ani na ya ma ade na yehuhu the me person make an say uba even the district na the chairman no hono so no ye de ne toto a magistrate of a circuit court say you be or qualified to that level and san wetimi atena so say a chairman and all these people no say the chief justice no na be say obeyi sankofo yi enti say ene ye kodu Supreme Court na chief justice a panel judges say omo metena wasem so a ye pese ye ka say chief justice no because say we yi judges or metena judges are we yi omo no sebi omo nya judges a omo betimi abo adwuma no nti say enen so say the tribunal ba na say the same chief justice ni nko yi nkofo a chief justice don be ba no omo abon nkofo omo nim hwe ene say the ye dada yi nyina no so no ene ma nso bebre nko yi say sa no wo ka say tribunal ba na ma chief justice power say onyi enipa no for omo nko tena so as members and I say committee members ono ka ho bi no omumu aten necessary ankofo a chief justice yi yesusu say omo qualified dia any judges say chief justice panel omu nyina no sana eye yewra ahimedu pese o kire eja isi the woman also yeti ase ne say this tribunal na MPP for asori etia yem pese ebeba so enunti no omo walk it out Ghana ha no mo hwe ye constitution a yesi eba atentrene a efri eye temamufo ne ho na ye de ma efa ye court anase ye judicial system ne so na temamufo ne de fa eso e de ma obi bia a osese ebe ma na atentrene okay. This tribunal system no is the same as the normal court system. Your jury are also a contribute to because these are also ordinary people and I say citizens are your GD say omunim die e wo mramu enye se wako school nkwan but otnasi no tie asem obetimi ehu say we ya mo kan dey your GD say we ni say na eko ye wi ayemfa ya asem nyina nkoma judge ona onim mra fatoto mra ne ho na hwe say the here can e ya anasenye is the same thing here but this one the ebeboa ne say ebema niema ko in 10 because when it comes to the tribunal they said the fast track court in 2002 now fast track court na the highest case and as a case omudi no the longer it can go should be 6 months this time round no uhwe bill na omama even timeline say yetna case so a ukọ the latter part of it obo say omo the timeline bi beto ho eja minim say wo you realize as part of it there's a timeline for determination of a case under Minerals and Mining Act into where process filing yama time also by day 42 I say so we be order na sema na say the case according sa tribunal yi I say it manage judgment we be boa maniema akọ wano enti so bit na baabi na enam se 8 years etwa mu no amamu omu bebu ye no sebi kata asehye ne proye edokro oman to the point say enipa bi de omonsa bo oman sika mu enipa bi ye niema ensem fatenti no ehu agbawo mo de a the bigger picture no enye wo mu ntia the bigger picture ne say obi a ohia justice enam say your local court and I say your normal court system na choki eja samre bebre da remand omo twen say da ben ye be frame asem da ben na judge mpo betie mi manu masem sankofo no na ye hwe say sa court eba na ebe ba be boa wo mu enti we are serving the people of Ghana we are not serving MPP enti say sa nipa no wo be fra sankofo ni ma mind you we are Ghana ni enti se e ma dwumadie bi na se wudi na dru ba bi na se obebu akonta se obebu eja maka se on 8 years etwa mu no aya na bebre ye ka democracy enye democracy na practice yo ye wo bibia ye frɛ no kakistocracy government the least qualified omo ye on principle do mu nimra so ne eniema no sa governance no ene enya sa ankofo no wo mu and ohwe niema omo be ye for 8 years I can assure you eja ye betimi aboboswa ma yeti kra paye ukaka we ya omo say ukaka we omo say di ehu na aba omo anya hu de moma yen hyemra ne nto so mo gidi say next 4 years on beba enti moma yen hye nto na mo ba mo machichi engum ana enti ada na wudwane because uhwe sa eya fast track court ya omampani dada wonya ne baby ko Jerry John Rawlings and a conceive that idea how dey buy but omampani ko 4 time ye implement ye enti buy na MP NDC fobi eho kan ye nti no ne say o sa de no ye ntu kra nwuma ye expunging free constitution ni mu ni ade these things they are doing emwa ye mimi gidi say baby amamra no say ye mfanto ho no mo amamra no say parliament and I say a debate no more obidi bill ko near say attorney general I presented the bill or the akoto ho no mo yakoto aba enipa 151 and na eto aba no out of 151 no 16 said there be emra we yempe montontwene emu 135 say emra we ye hia say ebeboa omanfo because ye manfo ayiye nti 135 no yenka say omo de no omo ye ne enye yemfa 16 ne de no nti ade na e-levy de no yekoto ye na sa majority eka say yemfa e-levy mra minority yan 10 ne sa ne yanka say o minority no esisa de ayenyai na that time the omutimi implement ye na enne the majority has spoken again say emra we no ebeboa Ghana for ebeboa omo asemi omo hia atentrene omo asabi omo cases work out 2 3 4 5 6 years up to now yentimi ma omo especially relating to certain aspects because any case bia na de call no mo enti I believe say bia eyehu na abo omo enam the bad government omo ede ewura mu for the past 8 years atwa mu from 2016 up to 2024 you experiencing the worst in our society because any democracy eja enkofo bi ohonuma I can assure you say enkomutimi ndi Ghana so da senye democracy under the disguise of democracy nti ekoto abako yi obi ohonuma mesi say by appointment anipa bi wa yintimi appoint omo into certain offices for the past 8 years from 2016 up to 2024 enkofo bi wa they didn't even deserve to serve Ghana na wanya sa akwanya na wie democracy or two wing me say ye ma wakwanya ni we are who said the other wing is accountability adena wudwane accountability
itu madwene mu no wogidi say MPP for by so no musro enti na mo yesa say sa na madwene mo de na mo so mo ka say mo she da de aba e de abetata wo mo a na nye the same thing
yes ndabi eja say unkofa obi ade na e pai kromfo a oda wonai
obeda
eja mame mawo an example Yura John Jinapo or recounting a story on the floor of parliament recently I think say you better key over here in 2017 also woni fear and who said national security operatives aboy run fear omo ba na omo so omo search warrant say you search in fear because in 2015 no ye deputy power minister deal because for a Mary plant into omo be pet document no na document obi fie ni eje obi hand over or the handing over note amount or the way amount mutimi sesa national security operative 5 with AK-47 ebo ra nipa ni fie abro ne ma ene ne yirada anopa tutu to a oboa ne ho akono mu bo ra o se be pet document no or say one resist any of them obie ma omo ba ye gidi omo man a copy of the search we no kra no omo say there be order from above search warrant you cannot get copy they took his phone to the point say ne personal laptop cry dey man or parliament ni nyina no omo pese omo nsaka no omo kohwehwe so omo nsa be kan document na onim de ndia
David
one kase ena de omo be ye no eye because me ye ndc ninti because no nim say be ni trimu ye fine on fa obi abibia document bia ni hono enti omo ye up to now order sufbo pursue CID for say what is the report amode mami based on investigation boy omo nya bi ma no and enye no na ode aba be ye no minister no enti say uye ye de aban adwuma na say ye de oman adwuma hye wonsa na uye wadwuma ye na ototo niema ya opa yemfa wiase mra nyina yenkyekere mra ne se den unim se wo mra enchew but se usro dia na chese efa baabi no wugidi se wudwumadi a wobedi ye no entwa ye na se de yaka se ye be recover every loot a obi afa ye no sa kleptocracy no mo be practice ye sa tivri na mo be ye yiyi niema bi sisade ensabobọ ensase ni sikasem bebre mu no sa ye be recover ni nyina eno na ama ehu eni pata bribri abo mo me eja me gidi se okay se wuni asem de a ohu ni asem a ye fra o court ade na wona nkoko mpopo ohu ni asem a ubetimi kura nante akogina ho ye betoto wano se den because emra no omo ni mra no ombeka kira o se wasem asem no hu mo a ye de ukose den kura obeba back. That is all what I want to say.
Okay, me da say yes aka ya osompa be kan yensa nti ya wakwa aba bibia boko adum ya be kan say the lawyer ni nti edan a ono so practice okokot de bia nti no bi obetumi aboa o sanse ya hwe sa tribunal nsem ya honkomo na ne yedi anope yansa na wo ba na dom kuma na kire say court hye a chese enfum so nko amino no nyafo nyimado ntwi kasa no pay chese niema hyedan ko se de se ko no enti won de omde ne se aban no twen san kora nya de obetu teams for so a press conference enra ama mo so akasa de phone se sa de na wo sa ewo mu a eno nti gidi se niema te sa na ekoso san se eyemra under the military rule no ye ne yenko ye bra democratic dispensation so a eno so ye ne yenko eti no said na tribunal na tie ewo soja fo amamu mu no sa pepepe na betena ewo sesi ade kama nka bi eye adwuma ya na
jamida se yencha ahwefo anopai eja nkomo we madwen ho and I think say is perhaps nkoma ya di nyina mizu say we one of the nkoma hu hia pa ni baako for a couple of reasons. I think say nyina ejitum say democracy no judiciary ena ekosi because say ja me no nya adwe a me because me wo kwan say me dey asem ne court nti me mfase kan and as a minu nyina abonten entoto atwede so judiciary becomes as a referee or making sure say this game of democracy is played in a way obia wojidi tanye bia ball no ayebo no say ne besi akobia no referee say bi obebu atenten ni etimfimfini nti yemfa mranche yensa obia anya de ope. And because this in part is seeking to practically reform, and my emphasis is on practically reform the judiciary, I've listened to the minority, I've listened to the majority. There are layers to it. The mechanism, you see, majority is right when they say Emrano has always been in our constitution. It's a living shell in 2002 when NPP came to power, tried to subdue. Basically, in 2002 there was an attempt not to use a tribunal. But other than that, the argument of the majority to say, but tribunals, your constitution has always provided the shells for it. Inti eban is saying seeking to implement their own constitution, and I think they are right in that sense. That Sebi, Emra Kunini 1992 constitution has in its frame. In that sense, seeking to implement something that is already in the constitution, however you see it, cannot be faulted because your constitutional architecture already provides that shell.
Okay.
So that's sort of the first point. But the other question is, the fact that it's in our constitution and there were attempts made to say a bit yes in chain 2002 no means we shouldn't use it anymore. My point is until the constitution is changed, Emrakunin Mahokwain said tribunals are a functional part of our judiciary. But the practical question is, why has tribunals never been used, or not never? Why were they not used as the constitution intended it to be? And I think that is where the minority has a very, very, very valid conversations around. Tribunals came through in 1982, PNDC Law 24, which introduced in Ghana's judiciary a tribunal system. Sebi, but the people who lived through that, internet TV so the legitimation will be an experience of tribunal.
Yeah, we me twawano atoaso na yensaka lawyer Kwaku Ansasare wa homa no so. Nti nkomo briefly na me review. Nti we me da papa no womre. Akura me na wachi o.
Yeah, me so so
me bare. Me bare o. Obaye da wase pa no womre no pay. Yo, me pa cho we de tribunal samsam ya ho nkomo na ye die. Minority chere se hihye bi a emwa mfomso bebre wom. Don kese no so kire se hihye babeboa ma atentere na atumi aye adwuma na ye ntemu so. Wadama uyo bi a wabin ewo emremu sa tribunal nsam yi wadwe kire wo ho ene de wo he.
Yo, me da se emremu de lawyer bia be wo emremu de enye be kwa lawyer bia o ye lawyer. Magini ke ewo we hun se tribunal no enye ena tribunal no pa Ghana tribunal de ifritite namum public tribunal as a concept there ente yera running the breso and or the tribunal nim no neno and the yera running na de by example no ebeye on military tribunal answer no beye on military tribunal and the tribunal there ifritite any atra fine namum media under 92 constitution na ewo community and circuit court tribunal na no constitution no beye ejuma ifite ejuma 7 January 1993 no koso kakra na Chief Justice Georgina Wood Mresono one Sena tribunal no sebe ye sika ye be sustain public district or community tribunal circuit community no homo amende court act no article 126 1b parliament ewo ho kwan constitution no amma Parliament kwan ema ultimately establish a lower court. Such lower court as Parliament may by law establish. Such lower court. And this Parliament consider bill establishing such lower court. Now, any council, one from where any council so because tribunal no normally woman enye nomna yi na ya sebi yenye ti kakra yehu normal tribunal no ye no etumi kasatia tesa no ba omo san beye dia na empata na no nkyere se emra ma ho kwan nti koto kasemu no the bill has legality in the constitution and it says article 125 clause 2 ema ho kwan se obiara biara ofre ne hu no gine hu di so e Ghana ni no it is all participating in the administration of justice and normal case that citizen participation you know it will be through tribunals and the constitution you know we the people of Ghana Yeah, and the talk constitution, yes, yes, tribunal. And this is what we can say. Tribunal, no, and Tiamra, Namum. So a bribia as I said, yes, son, a deba, Samriana, Ewoyan Tibia, you ana. No man could you or Tika Sem Afem, and they say Tika Sem Afem, dear, and they're not. And yet, sir, Sabri, and as I say, ye reintroduce tribunal, and I say, even ye court, no cry, ye what say here, the engineer so court, no. And ye did tribunal, Babe count, and ye are to me, ye baby to my dying, ye babe personnel, ye babe accountant, ye babe registrar, ye babe tribunal. Chairmen and women, ye babe, Sika Niho, Sika Kakra, and Wohono, Nanka say, ye universities, one more year sign, Omuni laboratory, secondary school, Omuni laboratory. It's a year Sika, bet immediately see at time, football, Ama Tribunal, for other name for Satikano, Enco educational sector, Enco health sector, Enco construction, ye road. Drive every motorway, say, oh, call Pram, and not the winner, and now, oh, call Akosumo. And yet, you need to get into a contractors car. Yeah, quite fast as the car way. Now, I said because NDC, a campaign, Yura president, John Mahama, a promise, in that promise, no. I want to vote to a loan, Emma NDC. It is almost by their own very pay loan, no, with the reintroduction of tribunal and classroom. A hodian, not and good year cry. Say, I know any of this tribunal no back, 60 years, and can say the back cry. Yan said, say yes to me and sound to me and quiet, no. Yes, uncle. Kuku no ma yen to me enye ye signing say aban foforo bi ba na enye NDC a won be twem na ya to sika na egu enti no me contribution is say NDC ni MPP enjoy party politics na on the Ghana bono and nya they should one call parliament na AP speaker e copy him clean and all parliament there say omo dwin ye no mu say on manu yedi ene hia yen na enye goals a NDC best score a say the oma bound to MPP 7-0 enye no ne so you will sika e betumi dia yen na say o ta sika na Argentina yen roads apro me to me fix Argentina insure ma me be na otwi mienu ni insure ma ewo me pipe moye into me a water bill by my year. I didn't emphasize the canon and go fix it. Yen secondary school to the near Vianidi. I didn't emphasize canon and go share now. Woman did this later and said, I am bring the course secondary school. If you say that you might increase Granum. Cran Sana, ya classes. Yen say yen students here or secondary schools and then I say. If there was that the canon, Yansan, Ebetre and say, you emphasize the canon. And no manner and koye mayen, rather than the very introduce. Are there a evoke bitter emotion, bitterness? I didn't say that. Are we not learning from our history? Say, tribunal, administer jungle justice. And you know, that no manner way around, and one thing. Among phobia stories and yet Sabri Mahama or Bonnie modern second a bit near as I'm fan into my pa a frebium. This is not the time, as I say, you reintroduce. Indeed, minority no our point, majority no so a point. How do they reconcile their divergences or differences for the betterment of Mother Ghana? And no. Maybe to discuss. As far as I'm concerned, since the public tribunal has legality in the constitution, the age reintroduction and it doesn't matter as far as the law is concerned. What matters to me is the economic sense of the reintroduction today. If it is only for a job for the NDC boys and girls, then I'm saying it's a slap on our national conscience, and it will remain, a scar on our individual consciences until sanity prevails, and until one day someone will have the decency and common sense to consider and evaluate objective conditions on the ground before taking any action to reintroduce anything in Parliament.
Okay.
That is my contribution.
So be to me I can say yen hwe ebrana tribunal no aye asrafo abremu no so no se bia adwuma faye tribunal system still na no your constitution da so wom nti obeka se constitution no obi amu so nti constitution ne hyehyɛ na ye de adwuma ye fa toto se saa bre no se do mo de ye adwuma ene ya ye de kabimamika bi aye adwuma no ya de pe ade kro anaso se edi tribunal na da so no obi betu aka se enu nti ene ye de ba na nye justification bi wo ho se betu aka se edi ni nti de ye abiribi abesi nkonti ense se ye de ba wadwen kire
yo enye edi tribunal no because already your family tribunal obi nkasanti a family tribunal da your land title tribunal obi nkasanti land title tribunal your tribunal Scratch, yeah, can say, once upon a time, then Nankasa start Nankasa, not a form of a tribunal. And yet, Dean Tribunal, no, and yet, Dean Tribunal, no. But this particular public tribunal, Lord, to be by a bit a war, a man will know, and no a man for a catassia. Yes, that is a process. Oma na 1981 yen wo na woman ministers, deputy ministers, here for a year. Womo enimia akoso wo yen history. And I yen kind history the nim yen history explain. So that it is not a word tribunal per se, but rather the practice of the tribunal, the direction of the tribunal, the schematic approach of the tribunal, and the way and manner one administer justice, Yankamra or tribunal or that tribunal are running the bay, Yankamra or so that and I make us say a vocal bitterness of the past. It is a family tribunal, nobody has ever complained that we should scrap the public tribunal. In fact, and for that is why I take 125 to I can't say that you are practicing such system, jury trial, assessor system was introduced in this country as far back as 1843. 1843, and a colonial government introduced jury and assessor system in this country. We are not, saying, man, tribunal na omanpanyi dada rolling they buy no eno na ye kasatia na mumsa that tribunal kra no okay article 125 clause 1A the regional tribunal is there it will be in kasantia here and think we should let sleeping dogs lie for now say that CPI benya sika and then na collective wisdom says that tribunal na one more passe jungle justice, 1 year ambushed justice na ancambra no and yes that tribunal no na ye reviewum tribunal ye reviewum no a tribunal the common sense and ambra and a be juma na ye tribunal
na beti nkofo
mo fa no nko
na anu bi ne yaba be ye so wo hwe the composition of sa tribunal ya chairman no ebeye obi a efa say regional tribunal no obi obeye high court the qualification and I say this susu the adretum de gina so de akokoye lawyer ni a obetumi aye high court judge na se ba district nso a ebi lawyer ni ono nso ebetumi akasa ba circuit court judge nti anya hwe kora no mo ya lawyer fo enimo mmara ansa nipa mienu nso abeka no ho do motumi aye wo de toto dada no ho a esa na net ye nsusu na enadie ene dada ni mu
minia senka ye wo man a ye kanokre ni edi enhunia anka we enye national issue kra na mum se NDC for your campaign MPP for your campaign na se omo ka se wo mo ba ten ye beye ten ye beye na se wo mo ye a eno na ha o man no me NDC mampenyi eye ne campaign o ka se research agenda into unbetter judiciary harming na mum say be a lawyer na minim say you are appointed chief justice as a third seniority bam na yanko fa senior ni akofa junior aye ne meka say dia no say me fwa nia research agenda no yes but my common sense and legal training and a legal tradition, you know, actually say they be chief justice yen part no the most senior and friendly kind. Now say she yenya as body be enka on ho dia na on firm na chief justice the on pattern so na ya bypass na for the next person. And no and I'm this support to the removal of Tokonu on grounds of principle. That is, you know, how objectively I assess the situation. Objectively, Cipriano, my assessment of the reintroduction of the public tribunal, whether a regional tribunal or not, is this. One, there is no need for reintroduction of regional tribunal because regional tribunal is written in the Constitution, Article 125, Article 126, Clause 1A, the regional tribunal is mentioned. So any call for reintroduction is out of the question. There's no need to reintroduce anything because it's already there. The amendment of the community tribunal, second court, that led to their scrapping, you know. Didn't mean say they cannot be reintroduced. The parliament at that time had every authority to consider amendment and amend it. This current parliament also has the power to bring it back. So as I say a debana, you say a secret moi, as I say a debana, you say a secret same moi, as I say a debana, you say in schools, you say in roads, you say in hospitals, you say in way, you say in way. So I say the man say daddy.
Okay.
And this is about. Now, I'm the best chatwo. I won't be Sammy by Mekan. And Rami Tayura, President of Mahama. Or say, second term, no. Out of the question.
Yeah.
Now, speculating. Now, mom, so be the court Supreme Court, not the Supreme Court. If the thing is plain, like the president said, say the 2 year term, the 2 term, 4 years, no, plain, it defies question. Why does anyone take the issue to the Supreme Court? And I can predict that will be the Agya Supreme Court. Knowing the all too predictable nature of our current Supreme Court, one more better say, and yes, I'm constitution, so there's no need. It is President Mahama. I am very sincere about what he said yesterday. All he should have said was, plain. It doesn't require any interpretation. It doesn't require any Supreme Court intervention. On no president, what kind of say, as a president, that was some wapim people from Mukwaya, That's all. So this invitation and urge, on a faceless entity to take the matter to the Supreme Court for a possible interpretation begs the question. It is one way of the president insulting the common sense of the average Ghanaian. Mumbo de President say 2-year term no aso onko biom yenjan towards no need for any Supreme Court.
Ya demra ana ya adwuma ana mampani ya olaya ni.
Demra no e clean and then say for Supreme Court.
Okay, ya e plain ana obi nso pese o test emra ne hwe. Constitution obi nso
plain or test what?
Obi nso pese o test hwe. Enti so nipa ne test ahwe a eno moa ema ye judicial system no enyini esa se the more na nsem bi e basa no e boye
Supreme Court na omuni mu aso be rubber stamp no na say
na ekwa na den na chese o rubber stamp sa na wadwene ye wana so
Supreme Court bounces ancestry 7 times. Supreme Court bounces ancestry 5-0. Supreme Court bounces Assembly 1-0. Supreme Court bounces, and see, that is what I meant by all too predictable, unanimous Supreme Court. This issue, will be placed before the Supreme Court. The judges will confront the issue, but the likely outcome is they will rubber stamp it and say that and yes, I na contract. At the end, they say birth certificate here. And the Supreme Court na man be na birth certificate here. So if we name the Supreme Court and say we name a more and for me, the president did a human job yesterday when he said, look, my legacy is to leave a good name. Then I'm that Dimpa Iye say Ahunya. And the president Nankasa, I recognize no, I appreciate it. The legacy of Beja and your legacy will be a bonny day. There's a Kwame Nkrumah, Jonathan Mills, even Nanado. Nanado, I'm criticizing every day, no grano. Nanado, made it quite plain. The Ghana, Abeye, shining light to Africa. The rest of Africa, how to play politics. And say or no, Hanover. He did not interfere when the deputy Baumia made a concession speech, and then we moved on. So the president, I can say, speculation, and he has put it, beyond the adventure. The matter, the chapter should close.
Okay.
Mo the president is Obiya on stop on the Panonga and yet making our way. Nagana Poina and we say, President,
you lawyer, don't pay me that's incredibly. Me don't pay me that's a papa and no pay any woman. Your net lawyer, Koku and Sassari. You can't Ghana Law School, no, a penny or dano, watch your hopa, watch the HMC pa. Let's see, Bisa also watch Emra, I think about 40 years or so. Now, and yes, I'm going to quarantine. I think so for 41, something like that. Or no, yeah, no one knows so I can say, my respect, Gina, so I can so can people communication team on understand yet. Oppose back on po here, the
Defense and Intelligence Committee Secretary.
Okay, Defense and Intelligence Committee Secretary Edema NPP Amayuku kwesi akwaba.
Ute me respected senior nyama mienu na me in summary. The decline that the introduction no illegal. It's not even reintroduction because our constitution anymore that. Until wamra kwan so there. There's nothing wrong. But only because of the economic realities of their way the Babancho Senka, Maya Nyan Sabri. So those are the two things I heard from him. It's important that we go back, and I was saying, there's a lot of who hear around this tribunal conversation here, PNDC Law 24 in 1982. I cover a public tribunal by as the respected senior was saying. Agya, ubusa a question be which I think is very important to say emrano senya yehu ne neno and need the lived experience or more course our tribunal sa na be ya na. And I think we can only speak to Mrano Senya is been released. I've had time to read the bill. Minimum Sesaya on my and so I don't know how the final one will look like. But I've read the bill. And I can tell you, and I'm going to go through that again, Omomoko through this 82 to 92 experience, no. Yeah, I didn't go through it. But means now in delegitimize said Yosusu say that court and only Ghana for we've read the history. I think that even the memorandum acknowledges said there were excesses of those tribunals. I think that if the minority evokes those emotions and I say omokofasa send nothing mano ni send amount for who any abuses of that quarter, it's an emotional grab. Sebio send your moye na no na sa no mo be sebio mo bo amount for there were excesses. I think it's an emotional grab which in many parts I think say it will be unfair to the law. Senya emrano yede mrana to sisia. Permit me to go through some element of the bill as is available.
Okay.
The section 3 establishes what they call the guiding principles. And I say Trimupobe na bechichire court no niema 1 2 3 4 niema 9 na kan wasem de di kan ya fairness there talks me new transparency there talks me say expedition and then it talks about efficiency so kwa me na befa so apepe ye ne sa court no mu nsem beda ho fine to extent it actually allows it says that regional tribunal processes may be televised depending on the nature of the public interest. The court, the bill specifically says it may be televised, but of course the judiciary and ran to permit for something to be televised. But I think the bigger point for me, the rules of evidence and procedure, because in Pembreka tribunal, Nipa Bebre say tribunal no enfamra kwan so nebu aten naten ya atenchia naten no nya aten because endimra so nti uko ha de obi ape bia no akacho. I think that if you look at section 28 and 25 of the bill, 25 says that the procedure shall be in accordance with the procedure of the criminal offences. Inti a procedure be different from the criminal process as is now. So that's also important to put. The only exception I have is Oko 28 or say evidence. No, quite fast I evidence and I attain who dance here no. A bet said the TSCI no evidence decree and evidence act no. Except to the necessary modifications. And I think that that's very important. Necessary modifications mean the explanation of what that necessary modifications are. And I think that if it goes into the law as that, then it may be say not to me the chairman and OB to sort of vary the rules of evidence, which can be very problematic. One good thing you see, particularly in the mining related cases, and I'll come to the jurisdiction. Say, for example, there's a long process, but this law allows you can serve people electronically. It is your WhatsApp number, you bet me that say no WhatsApp, and it's deemed valid in the spirit of expedition. But what's the jurisdiction of the court? Courts no, ni to me ni day who has no becker. There are a couple of things, and narcotic, cocaine, no related matters. That's number one. It talks about income tax, tax related issues. There talks about customs and related issues. There talks about minerals and mining act. Galamsey, the Galamsey related issues. It talks about economic fraud and loss. Yoko, Maisika, and those related shit. I think that there is something that it says offenses against the state and public interest, which I think again, if that language went into the final bill, that is where sometimes minority know what questions, because this can become a grab for against anybody. We saw the previous government do treason against people. We all knew some of those allegations shouldn't be entertained in any court.
Yeah.
But politicians use the court system to prosecute political opponents and enemies. So sometimes if you see things like this, the question is, to what extent and being far legitimate and rightful process and find it in a harmful, and I said the political enemies, which are very legitimate questions. And that this process seems to subject it to the judiciary. First, public tribunals but to say there's a right of appeal to court of appeal, so-called regional tribunal. There's a right of appeal in the normal judiciary system, which in my view, I think it integrates, and I say this tribunal system become court in its frame, and in that sense I think it's a good thing. Let me just round up. I think that the bigger question, which my senior says, Jesus say emra way, which is legal and legitimate. Obia intimi nkase the emra na banuti amra na fom mra na anything. The question is the wisdom of it. Sebi who ya say ye ne sabre ya na, which my respected senior said onu on susu ni sa. Eja ohia nyema mienu comes in the argument for the entire majority susu say it's important. Ye kan operation recover all loot. Yen nyina ye kan ho asem the level of at least the perception of corruption. And the kwa first some the normal judicial process. Me personally, I filed a writ against somebody in 2024 April. 2 years now. The case, it's still crawling, right? Every lawyer knows that the typical judiciary process, the wheels of justice grind slowly.
But they slow though.
No question say it can be frustrating for people seeking justice. Open you be Oklahoma. I'm one of the lawyers I said working his team. He's been banking crisis, Mr. Amwabe, banking crisis after everything. Went through Yoko for almost 2-3 years. When the cases were filed, he's been subject to the same ordeal. 14th August. It's 9 years, 2017, since the banks were closed. The cases are still in court without resolve. For 9 years, somebody has been subject to the weight of the state against them without resolve. 9 years. Of course, not the entire court process, but through Yoko and all of 9 years. 9. All the opportunities, all his business, everything, the cost of being subject to a criminal process warrants what the current system needs to change somehow. And that's why I disagree with my senior. To say the weight, baby, a judiciary knew here, and the failure of justice, what it represents for our democracy, the inefficiencies must be resolved. And you are resolving inefficiencies now. It's only a matter of time. Man for them, because even now, Obibeko Kota, Obeka say, in Kenya right? And it portends real threat to our democracy. The question, however, is, does the tribunal solve that problem? Does the tribunal solve the inefficiencies problem? In part, it seems to suggest a best solve it. But the point is, in my view, I don't have any opposition as is to the law on paper as I've seen it. The reality is that if you start to say at the year Juma, there are real issues that become this process is subject to the other judiciary. So, in Kamia say a court, I want who to me say there is another forum, including the Supreme Court, which can set whether the law is unconstitutional or the practices subject to appeal. But Mrs. said the bigger reason of efficiency and the bigger reason say yɛbɛma yɛ court ayɛ effective no if this is an attempt to solve that problem I think say any attempt to solve that problem is welcome. Okay. As to whether or not it will solve it in practice, a different question. Yet to see.
Me that's ya so pa me that's pa kwesi. Mo na ma raise issues me ne onuya fadumadu. Sorry. Edin command pay. Ma ne chechem so fu so ahodo bebre e wo saa tribunal mu na edi hu kura atonkrofo so. Me sense bibia besin kon saa tribunal soldier for abreso no. Niama ye no there were excesses niama bibire koye asedan koye kura ye wo democratic dispensation mu anya se bia asrafo didi asunti no obe before complain bia na ye baba ye wa ha ye the constitution na ye adwuma de mara na baba ye adwuma sa tetetra bi na no enhyehyɛ de ye adwuma ane imprempre tribunal no hyehyɛ de ye adwuma no muhu ni say ye pe eno ntina bia mo susu se emwa anase de mafoforo bi so sa won chenchenchen a wogidi se eno ka ho bi se bi no mo ka se se bibia ni hunsam a omo kwansa man kwadan titi hunsa achi yetie yesi akoronfo me mo akoro no mi nwane nti bia boni bia de pedi esi nti no mususu se bia eba se eba ne sa nkrofo ba che wo mo eden pa na ha adwere
Jami dase anopedia me fa konya so na me chia me nuanoma ye di nkomo yi senior answer Kayana. The conversation is not about the constitutionality or legality of Embrana Yedebano. That is not about that's not the conversation. Minjini is a minority for na can be say Embrana Yedebano illegal. And I say Embrana Yedebano unconstitutional. And I make kind TUC for so press statement, you know. Me hun baby I say or more kasa asem say your unconstitutional na illegal. I mean your constitution is clear. Regional tribunal is mentioned in our constitution. That is not the conversation. In fact, Parliament so home quite crass or more establish other lower courts. Any idea in 2002 Parliament amended Court Act and Act 602 or more the circuit court and the district court in the by. Niti Parliament will home quite say or mutimi establish courts. They have that authority, and that is not the conversation I can say. But the other concerns are Ghana for TUC minority force to say what the tendency say a be higher democracy now. Now the edikan here tribunal in Semia senior council senior so kan you know. And then I shall say a Dutch government now and then the Ghana sometime in 1872. Establish a Supreme Court near the idea na Supreme Court no celebrating 150 years. And near the idea bar down after independence. The Armed Forces Revolutionary Council. Omo na edi kan started say omo pese omo introduce say public tribunal senior the idea na eja meba after independence in sensem no. Tama in 1981 PNDC for a year coup omo beje aban na omo disbanded political parties opposition members 492 of them a year in Yoma Bebrebe, you know. Rollins Kasimbi, with your permission, I'll just read briefly. And I'm quoting from the Human Rights Watch, where publication on the establishment of the tribunal system. And Oma quote Rollins, so in quote, Oma say, in Rollins' first speech following the 31st December coup, he declared to Ghanaians that, and I quote, in this society, there is no justice. And as long as there is no justice, I would say that there shall be no peace. So the purpose President Rawlings at the time, at the tribunals nearby, was at the justice. And that is also the purpose of the court system. Say court system no be provided for justice. Now, or establishing tribunals, no, then you hear. Senama Kanye opposition for 492. History chair say ye buabinim. History chair say natural justice cry anye juma chair say so be tie nipa na udi na asem na anye juma. History so chair say that tribunal system, when they were focused on social justice rather than rule of law. Not just say kebi mamin kebi say yes subject to the constitution at the time near the idea that time card they cool by constitution ni ho. But just what I say, and this an your money near biano. Tribunals no e de oyaw e Ghana for. Tribunals ne e de a lot of excesses. And council so kind the memorandum of the constitution acknowledge say tribunal system na PNDC system e de excesses p e bae. Entieja the conversation this morning no me bana metie menua e pese kire say tribunal ne kra ne court system no e the same na tribunal court system ne kra no etimi ye judge and jury into the tribunal and so ba and also no ebe you know something similar, but from their council akawa no clearly no jurisdictional issues ebeba jurisdictional conflict ABC jurisdictional conflict in the sense that tribunal no what is the purpose of it? Yes, certain brabia every student of interpretation will tell you say embrano is to cure a certain mischief. Eye bibi nti ne ye hye embrano. Bibi boni a ekoso society mu nti na wo se ye hye embra ne ye de so ano is to cure a mischief. Yem bisa you say what mischief is sa tribunal bill yi eba be solve. They've made the case for speedy trials. Eja o hwe your current court system na and there was specialized courts. Mo no more specialize asemba ko mienu miensa pe no mudi he oral in same year enia yeni me yanka oral ho asem but enia yeni se chema wontumi ogina specialized court ye wie na asem ni two cases e work court Samarboy ne town on prosecution aklosi in fact Samarboy case ne crowd there try and about to an end town on prosecution aklosi ni case he sky train in same year prosecution aklosi o mo case other cases na ekoso ninia ebinim kra day to day trials Monday to Thursday but just what you say anti speedy trials ne dey specialized court no attended to so speedy trials can one say we can make the argument say enya exhaustive I agree but can same way near no who says speedy trials na specialized court ninia it comes with resources. That is why the minority is saying say the judiciary is the least funded arm of government in this country. Open arm of government our budget comparing the executive, the legislature to the judiciary no budget what from cry. Inti say ye per se ye solve speedy trial, ye this speedy trials, but ye solve delayed trials near the idea. The minority is proposing say instead of establishing a new architecture, and the current court system no ever competing no. I didn't think I have resources and strengthen the current architecture. You have been pomp sika any resources ain't good the current court system. Now you have more judges a juma. Now you see more courthouses. Now current judicial system near no. Just imagine say high court complex across the 16 regions. It be baby. I'm not sure we'll be talking about delayed trials. But just what the American say because the existing 10 regions now. I think say every region be one a high court. But pressure what high court. So I'll give you an example. Oko Ashanti region, high court Ashanti region. Pressure what high court Ashanti region so na nyasem ketwa. Because court dine ankasan tete dine. Court dine here dine a predating 1992 tete dine. It will help court rooms near the idea na cry now to say dine no cry dada. And to see yes, you have set up new system. Adentina, you have 5 resources, more high courts, more court of appeals across the regions. Now you strengthen the existing system. Into minority in the case, they say, South tribunals, one. At the current year, there's already a solution to it. Council some educated can. The jurisdiction of the regional tribunals, so more be solve economic matters. Council will agree with me say no court complex no. There was specialized court financial and economic matters. What are you concerned me ako? There's a specialized court for it. So a specialized court no awari sem nko asase sem nko ho. Chieftaincy sem nko ho. A specialized court for economic and financial matters and no ko ho you concerned and no mutie wo honom. Again, you see, your tribunal never yet tax in sensem near the current court system, has jurisdiction to hear tax matters. tax fraud in the tax evasion in nyoma I say won't you out 20 the current court system has jurisdiction to hear those matters. And the yes if him crown say you see the regional tribunals here ya debate and what the jurisdiction to hear say form or minor that is if you breach provisions of Act 29 but just what I say and now commit criminal offense the largest ambit of criminal trial and they say what form or minor. Which means that the regional tribunal is going to have jurisdiction to entertain every criminal matter.
Basically,
for instance, say because we are publishing false news, say a criminal matter. The regional tribunal is going to have jurisdiction to hear such matters. Because say ubia ye bibia criminal matter bia regional tribunal, and that is the job of the existing courts. Eja, that is the job of the existing courts. And the minority concern number 3 or more raising is say if in Brandon say regional tribunal no betime tie criminal matter bia then it means say ye hia nkofo a omote the criminal justice and criminal procedure na say my local law school e be criminal procedure law student lawyer bia take criminal procedure say but the composition of regional tribunal na you say ye benya lawyer say na aka ye no the dibre ene high court judge about 12 years at the bar or more never qualify. However, there are 2 other members of the tribunal who are non-lawyers. They don't even know how the law operates. Obisa minority no concern. They say now all the rape case akwako jina the name original tribunal now because original tribunal na mayati I say criminal matter be intimity. Now they akwo jina the name where they ati ase. All the financial and economic matter akwo jina obi a onye non-lawyer onye lawyer enima. How would he appreciate the issues and even understand the criminal procedure, understand the criminal justice system, understand say criminal position of assembly element ni say intini say lawyer need to establish element where and I say the person must prove the burden of proof near the idea no crowd. The burden and non-lawyer no are appreciated. And in the case of the minority is that yenjai the same way niano emma the existing court system. And let's strengthen the existing court system. Say nebe the existing court system no. Ebenya to media
okay.
Another concern.
Okay.
Another concern almost raised about appointment and they say another composition of regional tribunal and they say the act doesn't lay out appointment clearly apart from the qualification. It gives grounds for impartiality. For instance, Ghana will be himself say, oh, you're politically exposed person, untimi nye judge man in ye. Me amiti untimi appointed me the fact that me ye MPP ni amabet na will be him say me ye politically exposed person true and true no. Ofa me judge a be raise eyebrows kaka.
But we've seen it.
But just what I say, a be raise in isolated cases, but a be raise eyebrows kaka. But in these cases, Embrano entre how you bet my fast uncle for Injetina, yet baby a bit maka say MPP General Secretary or your 12 years at the bar. Ye fano, uncle regional tribunal penny, no tia semo Ashanti region. Intino, the law in its current form now, ya passing. Council, ya can in ya no more pass you. Or more pass your president, a castle be assentina be yembra. Intino some concerns we munia and then the concerns are TUC for no area you say who had the tribunal system in the past. Now her tribunal system now see your day banner. I say difference for me there because back on under soldier and we under democracy. However, there are also some similarities because under the previous tribunal no and also say non-lawyers soldier for et meeting na obi asem to the criminal matter. Me purchase what I say. And again, Eja on the point say sa tribunal we no can say court system no etie etimi judge and jury trial anti tribunal we so timi ye bia and say hwe anya asem bia na ye judge and jury trial ye will be a friend of trial by indictment and no ye no by judge and jury. For instance murder and no ye judge and jury but ye case obi akowia aban sika and say allegedly obi de nisa abo aban sika man anya judge and jury asem and we judge nko asem and even in the matter of judge and jury no the jury does not establish matters of law because omunya lawyers. But in this case, the tribunal now you see conform no any non-lawyers, they will be determining matters of law.
I think there's even a bigger question of jury selection.
You understand?
In the jury process, no.
Absolutely.
You select, both parties agreed to select.
And in this case, it's
not like that.
In this case, the government of the day, and I say Chief Justice, Chief Justice, Chief Justice, not government, some of government to a large extent. But Chief Justice, and a appointed. Oh, there be and the America so constitution actually say was so independent. I don't care. There is no even about a person independent and another person being independent. Only option the Chief Justice has to be independent. And you know. Say Chief Justice na power sound crofo na. The point is that sound crofo no the selection criteria na kra no. And say judge and jury are two councils no be opportunity so jury we mempenasem because we could make social media post actually na adwen the theory and the philosophy about a certain matter. Until no ontimi nya the fairness of mind to establish the facts surrounding this matter because or no there or your gender bias towards women and not towards men. In the same way ni there would transfer be a enye tribunal no entesa council no uni hu opportunity the only opportunity I'll be nyane say so wa dance say nipa na obetena asem no so be exhibit bias towards you there just like you have it under the regular court system ultimately the court judge we no o person you see here nyama ontimi nya pepepe eno de ubetimi de akọ inteja insema ye ka ho asem nia no concerns when I think say a valid concerns. TUC a raising, senior lawyers a raising, minority a raising. Even some members of the majority clear a raising similar concerns. It's incumbent upon Parliament and committee to make it more clearer and to distinguish between the current court system and the tribunal. Send a minority in the fundamental point and it's a tribunal in creative parallel legal architecture as the court system. Say, and then assembly bar, yetimi the ukojina regional tribunal, yetimi the ukojina court. And my young criticize parallel system because a recipe for chaos.
Next say tribunal no yanka say ono najuma ni so peja asota.
Sa pepe.
Najuma no.
Who say na council can say oko and current court architecture na. Your family tribunal, your land tribunal. In the same be ambra we omode be omo ka so ye de ba be ye anti-galamsey tribunal say no you chill for galamsey offense you do ha. I don't think anybody will have a problem with it but say tribunal no benya to me say assembly court ni betimetie no onu nso betimetie ni there. I think say that it is a major challenge and it is also creating a parallel system and in any case can offer Agya Kwabena asema make in say such tribunal system ye kan wan asem nian at this material point in time. Is that what our judicial system needs? That is my concern. Say, at this point in time, I hear a speedy trial, filing, they say, Krano, even though say, I recognize the admissibility of electronic evidence, Krano. Sometimes Krano say, Obi Krano say, cross-examine on Skype and now Zoom, Krano. It's a challenge with the current court system because Rebecca also Zoom equipment and another court you use into adjournment, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you better adjournment and your light off. Near the idea you're frustrating and these are realities and you know I didn't know tribunal nisika ye de babe setting up they just say na medical can have made a point you know you find service are inefficiencies of the prevailing court system they say you
they say no honey na no camp bon to fan say sikasam sunsunpe na mo no honam sikasam one answer na so no be na juma fa no so
jurisdiction
I don't so
the jurisdiction because once even the current court system na kra no say o court you high court nearby but you how court be able to me was a makwa you bit makacho say court we kra ni bia only jurisdiction to entertain the matter mpacho so what I say and they finally as I land the internment mema dream mo mema dream is misusu say the entire constitution is the shame say benya regional tribunal and say the beya justice can be decentralized justice back the various regions but say no oh here justice no what the various regions region be our high court me patcho so what I say into regional tribunal na nanka ma dwimu na bia famous of the constitution per se supreme court no one crime me patcho so what I say supreme court ni e baako high court e baako court of appeal e baako na mom so mo benya omo nkrabata bebre a omo betime di aboa ma justice akoso a se ne be ya e bia se owo ho na say obi sisi wo pese oje wasase a onfa asem ne mba Accra High Court
na be ka
wo High Court etie wasem na I think say yeah democracy ne yeah judicial system ne develop say regions in ya no they say omu ni omu High Court omu di asem intino the regional tribunal no e dey important na regional tribunal ne ba be ye and Agya Kwabena enye say obi suro bibi and I say obi in any case say susu obi for my nisika say existing court no any nipa ni be so the person doesn't need say obey suro regional tribunal be say regional tribunal be na ba be ye bibi and I say except say be a regional tribunal ni ba be ye bibi a ye nim but say yesusu say obi for my nisika obi aye boni bi etio minor the existing court systems no e wo ho say dem tell makule yesusu say for my nisika na existing court system ni be na asem anameboa under this current dispensation amount for yesusu say omo for my nisika no aye omo the right to innocence and your existing court system ni dey omo asem into what exactly is the main intention and I say the main purpose in tia yesusu say the existing court system no entimi nya yehia regional tribunal finally with your permission I think say one of the major reasons in tia man for so are you uncomfortable with the regional tribunal the minorities uncomfortable and say PNDC 4 say ni di kaka 1981 and the public tribunals ne ba 82 the public tribunals ne ba yes excesses na eye nim say NDC if PNDC Chairman Rollins son the founder of the NDC entino amount aye hypersensitive say is it the case say because omo the public tribunal ne ba ya under PNDC no what the tendencies and net tribunals know what the tendencies of sir PNDC for and then one of the major sentiments
come to me said the soldier for amemu wamoye omuniama no on betumi dia baba be wura kabi insise musa be
the tendencies
okay
that's what I'm saying say tendencies
okay
but just what the American say apprehension among for was say hey they say PNDC for ya they say NDC for ya and the democratic government mo be polish dia na mo ye no public tribunals ni mu aba be ye ni sese ana inti na ye concern I think say among for media as I conclude I don't think say one the public tribunal no necessary at this time. Number two I think say it's a waste of public resources. I think number three I think say if I buy what's called the public tribunals and I say regional tribunals or invest says into the existing court system not find strengthening. Number four I think say the appointment of persons onto the regional tribunal no problematic. You cannot appoint non-lawyers to be adjudicating matters of criminal nature. The number five, even the procedural procedure regional tribunal never fast so crown. I think say and also a bit problematic and share that in some recipe for disaster.
Okay, me that's it. Well, doctor, now come so can be 1 minute, 2 minutes. Be now, you quite a topic no so.
I just say, I'm chance and say topic we know. I'm say here attention. Yeah. And Mr. Obama America crana yet me
okay, more bit my bay numbi.
Mate. I'm say Mathieu Kwesi Wakasa. But sometimes the question I me busa me hone say you see Kwesi a very nice fine gentleman. I mean him say Osuan dear pa. But Osuan MPP atade Okasa different. Because you all can no I say obusa questions no obusa ni so nyina our answers onim say answers no clearly stated in the bill. One of the questions Kwesi busa ni say sisi ano ye be kofa party executives no wa ba betena so as members. Meanwhile within the bill no ya state wa hanomo ukan sa the we na di anim na summary no mama ansa no makọ the main we in the content of the bill now. Yeah, say the clause further excludes me kind we I think say V we hear the front pages and I say first initial pages now the 5 no the clause 8 provides qualification for members of the regional, and okay down now say the clause further excludes the appointment of a sitting member of parliament or a person who holds any political way. Inti yedi kan ya Canada wakan onimansa no, but unse Ghana for no bebrenya adaje nkan inti or the beto sa na akwete say eh ade ne kra no say yetimi the MPP and NDC chairman bi betena so and say but enyesa the bill is explicit wa categorizing nipa ebitimi use omo na ade ba ko aye me ya ne say you see I respect lawyers a lot and I know say you can't nkofo a omunim de omuka ho but say a lawyer kasana bibia o make the assumption say one call law school wa bon a very insulting because yete ha no so be any lawyer I no say bi onim nyansa because I say oh and matters of law and until we yase no until we yase the question I want to ask myself and say are we saying say ye kofa obi a odọ kokofuo na de na ba betena ho no mo ye kwakofa obi a sebi ono ni wiase nyina wotu banchia na de na ba betena so as a member of the committee are we saying say in our normal system no yentimi nya obi a ontena classroom wasua amefa say wasua law agi degree and say oye LLB and say whatever now on for me part it is a statement within the constitution say justice emanates from the people. No, people be lawyers in Kwan. Na say come say no no justice emanates from lawyers. Then they who say oh and the lawyer pen a bit me amount justice. Yeah, and I think say that one we all don't accept it. Say Kwesiko way below the belt. I know him. He can do far better. But on say then was you know atade
so we see the party and
was atade no. I know say you can do better, but to share MPP at Adena.
Okay, man, to their kind.
Okay. And or can be about the tribunal system now. I think say we have to understand this. Say they are not competing because share yemra yewo manima. Yebeka chero say the judicial shall be made up of the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, the High Court, and regional tribunals, and such lower courts and tribunals as Parliament may establish, and shall have the Chief Justice as a head. Or say, your High Court there, you hear a, then your High Court there, how the appeals court here, na say no mun na compete, ana.
Appeal dey because ha na nyi it me the corner man asa kokoshe.
Enti omo ba na omo be establish a circuit and magistrate court, omo so compete with high court. I mean this is not here or there. Ya say you hear different type of court normal handle issues minimum. The constitution has stated it clearly. And okache me say ya try high court and ya try tribunal be compete with high court, and there are high courts everywhere, but there are high courts everywhere. So why magistrate court, why circuit court, why all the other courts? And there's someone also compete. The idea of tribunal say will be conceived say a PNDC and now what transmogrify into an NDC, and so because of that in bibi and I buy you won't say the soldier buy maybe a juma. You buy ya mampanyama enema ya for dollar aba from ya even your onkophobia at time President Kufuor time they went ahead to reduce prices of goods just to make the government look good. You nim our man you say MPP for bebre no omu didwane ade tete niema so that they can say President Kufuor abreso niema ma yede. The same people are still in trade and businesses omampanyima dollar bar from economic situation cost omunti omu niema so kro omu so omunti no so omampanyina ko round the show be ma say kalebule ni niema ekoso. This is not something that you should bring even into our discussion. Say, 82, soldier buying time, you know, a bit bad this time. Yeah, buy soldier buy ja. And he found who say, Omampeni John Dramani Mahama buy a constitution now, or the Ibu or mine, or the soldier buying near maybe ashim. Oh dear, Omomami one example say, Adia way, or the soldier buying near man a year. Soldier buying near my constitution behind your Jumana, the Omo can obey before complain. This time round, we are using the constitution, and the bill has stated everything clearly. Yeah, from crank to crank. actually be also here. And I think say you come back with that narrative now. So you are buying for now, or transmogrify and on my NDC and blah 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 blah. I don't know about my and one and 2 minutes by force. Now I'm a medium so say come on my house, then can you buy you want to make careful in court. At the end of the day, by this time you can jail in that because perception accounts a lot. But we felt say we need to follow due process. As you say, I know to the point say you be announcing the judgment, crowd with make us a delay judgment and a man time which the court also permits say a part of the process.
Okay. Just
2 points quickly.
Mr.
Su say I think the question and what I've heard, there's actually real risk that this law can become problematic. My obia assume say the minority, the more can any legitimate. I think there is real legitimacy to the risk. However, then the risk is important, particularly because we are talking about people's civil liberties. Say a crime or so there's real concern. But for me, if there are 3,360 new cases backlog per year, 3,000, that's according to the report, 3,360 case backlog per year. In the Amphibia, no case at Becca home, not near the Ohodadao.
The
Becca home. Again, justice may grind slowly, but you know, justice delayed is justice denied as well. So the bigger question as to finding a way to solve it is real. My view, a 3-member panel charged by somebody of qualification as a high court judge and as a circuit court judge with 2 other people subject to judicial counsel and with the right of appeal into the normal judiciary system, in my view, is defensible. On paper, it looks like it can solve the problems of the backlog and is defensible in a way that it sees some of the risk now. My bigger question, which is why I'm ending this, if as to whether implementation will not be political like we do many things in this country, if it will be implemented with honesty, candor, and respect for people's right and fairness, then I think that the risk may not materialize. But MPP NDC in the politics, then the real risk of the law would be seen. But I think that we can't disregard exactly what the minorities say because there are real concerns. But I think that the architecture of the law, as I've seen it, seems while solving the real problem of the backlogs. As to whether or not implementation will be different, it's a different, and I think that's the real conversation.
Over the week, in some Baku say BPM, say minority press conference, and can say, Ureya, yes, ye jelly nino. Minority force or more a catch rabbi say one shena say other tribe who be opposed and from piano when shena winyai. This concerns are a raising Mr. Miracle Waji dear Bamu, Mammy a rain so during the 1 year a Bamu and one some samples. Quasi, you can say freedom of speech. See, a freedom of speech. If you and a copy of him, and I send the freedom of speech until a course, copy may be a say, and she to be I say, if it's like a had a pim, ye need be sir. Not young shares are 3 a course, I say, when you are bringing more can once a minute. Mammy to base medu.
Agya Kwabena, Medasi Bebre. Inti the miracles there ne leading ne nia
e betumi ka kanin na mi nyina bom America de miracle de ya ka anti de betumi de run de kra
ane de no de dikan o MPP and I say me personally obi ene wo endorse hate speech and I say violent speech nobody endorses it say ebia obi be ka sembia e mo so ka obi ene wo endorses ade na. Number 2, the position of MPP is not say so be boom raswa and my young coaching nipa krono and then my investigating nipa krono and then my young prosecuting nipa krono. the position of MPP ne say enfa nipa kro no enfa mbra kwan so lady asemi then asi yes lady na ko kan sembi na nsem na lady ne ko kan ye ni ntino police for koche no on 7th July according to police statement of release on 7th July on 7th July and police feel secure on the conviction on 16th July
on her own plea
on 16th July. One, it is a fact about one thing. Say lady no police for koche no then the bush and for kra ni baby lady ni yede na kwa koshe the bush and for chi Accra ha police station ni omo ehun baby yede lady na kwa koshe subsequently the bush and for hu no eno mo hu say lady no ya bona ma max aba ne hu nia oyobia was suffer violence any ye bisa lady ne say violence na was suffer ne ba ne say and there's an audio going around that lady nankasa record the audio the to abonten say ye che na ye de ne call NIB no na mo bo no na was sustaining sa injuries na fast forward apart from the fact that 48 hours no police for buso or man access to counsel access to family access to bibia no and nobody nipa lady in the court lady in the court no record the lady didn't have a lawyer. Lady no ni lawyer. Lady no so no on take the course of courtroom has. And what we have been told is that the lady pleaded guilty. Until after lady ni pleaded guilty no, and I am aware say constituency MPP constituency executive say wo wutu senya. Arrange for lawyer Emma lady because apparently that's the lady's constituency. Arrange for lawyer and a lawyer ne kokasa any ade no omo court. Into omo court no na lawyer ni plead we judge ne say oh my lord tama lady be ye taking the plea no ni lawyer lady no nsensema okenya no no ntiase onim dia na o ka no again lady na suffer injuries near the is evident on lady ne body say ya shin whilst she was in custody. Until the plea no pleaded guilty in the crown, it's possible say she did so under duress. And that she didn't voluntarily plead guilty. 1, 2, she didn't even understand and appreciate what was happening in court because she didn't have the right to legal counsel and legal representation. And when him say under Yambrano say obi a plead guilty. Na say plea no enye voluntary, and I said the plea was secured under duress, and now the plea was secured under threat by law enforcement. That plea no, is recognized as a plea be a bit mabuegu in court. Now, lady, the lawyer ko catch a judge and they say, and a lawyer can catch a court and they say, lady ne access to legal representation. Lady ne TRC into no pleaded guilty. Nintinka court ne ma ho kwan for her plea to be retaken. The court didn't agree. And now later man ko ye pregnancy test na ye de ba bonten say ya sentence no for 1 year. But you see Agya Kwabena, on a more serious note, if Obi Kasema, I think say this government is super hypersensitive about certain things. Obi ko ka asem bia ye nipa na waka asem ne kra that nipa ne kra have the capacity to carry out in sem na nipa ne kanana. And yes Obi ka bibia na abai na ye so sensitive to the extent say abai no asuma ni akochi nipa no ni abonu in custody ye di nipa ne court ye man access to lawyer
yeah man access na so no ankasa na one request for one.
Oh, unim say even yembre mu ni such matters na kra ni say ya nipa ni lawyer kra na abai ni timi arrange lawyer man from legal aid. Me patrol what I say. Abai timi arrange lawyer man from legal aid. And in such a matter and I've just disclosed to you say lady ne kra ni enim baby na ohye. And he say granted without admitting say no lawyer kra na fa ni say no lawyer. Lawyer ne kra to locate baby grow lady ne wo no. Very difficult until they didn't call court we and some lawyers need to me follow court process na the idea ko hu baby a ye dey lady ne she but before I didn't be court na the busuanfo onim obi ante ho hwe eja media kra ante ho hwe on the first day I dey lady ne court The tia ni say lady na plead guilty a ya ba bedru baby a yedre. But say na American, I think say aban na ye too much sensitive about some of these.
Yeah, share maybe in someone ye can. So does the person have the capacity to carry out the person? There was some treason case be. Ama yachi nipa beye enai bi.
Western Togoland dey na
there be Agbozo no mo dey no.
Police officer no. Ene other people that can back on the crown na yotomfo. Blacksmith be on no so ka ho. You consider say na many nyina say enkofo ne some be treason. There was one doctor be so no call we free mu. Yem say na womu wo capacity no so betumi aye bibi ete saa ansa na ye do court remand wo severally mpo ansa na judgment ba na say ruling ba ya agozo nya na tididi mo ni ada one cause agozo utie nsama na okan sabre ni nyina na anya de a wo mabọ pobo ni bia but ye tie nsama akọwi ase no ya ntehwe because that time no high profile issue pa our Ghana ha enti
na bisa say ye fa capacity no yastika and no betumi aye bibia fantasy use ni sa.
You see, I'm not saying say capacity should be the yardstick, but I'm saying say sometimes it has to be considered. Ofa abozomun same year, we always say two senior police officers, military officers can.
A lady.
Military officer lady. Intisi say the capacity to conduct a coup. Abozo, for the record, I think say court acquitted eventually.
Yeah.
But he has a capacity to conduct such a thing. I'm not even speaking in respect of Agbozo because on there he's been acquitted. But he acquitted police need penny pa any soldier ni. Nasi ye say omo plani bibisa. It gives some reasonable suspicion. Say any maybe police and military connection media maybe they can bibisa bit makos. But I'm not saying say sanity. Because nipa ni acquitted no court na acquitted no which means court na adia to me say na bibia nim Agbozo no didn't have any question to answer or whatsoever. But the point I'm making is so bit TikTok na say nipa ne ka say ABCD let us consider say nipa na sem no kan no say be enumdwa bi na nipa ni dwa na say nipa no the tendency so bit ma carry it out.
They don't ever have the tendency to carry out any.
But just what I say, I don't know the full facts about Oliver there. But just what I say, But yeah, she say nipa no wo sa enyoma ni ase
your videos be or before say yeah producer be born at appropriate time.
But I am very confident and I'm very clear in my mind. Says our TikTok lady when you right to legal representation at the time can a lawyer any advice in his own pleading guilty. Number one. Number two, nka sem ne ko full trial anka lady I don't think say anka prosecution be to secure the conviction of the lady. Because lady we have been told say or you illiterate sebe or you be on co school da or you be on legal jurisprudence na say on criminal justice system na say any dey na ko gina court any bisa no say udi for na adi and now ya born yourself in bisa na say no and I say odi for na court and can say odi for there so they are convicted on your own plea judge dey say no be any amani 1 year say onko them but say nyoma we ni ano what I'm saying is say if you say nkofo afoma minor let's afford them their constitutional right
to win
the right to legal counsel na your constitutional right the right to legal counsel your constitutional right it tell now bet you obi a police ye ni baby adi nipa kora na akwakwose ye bet you say nipa kora na plead guilty na che say nipa na watching no did you have the intention say o de ne kwakosie ama ne shabby treatment be say ne be ya nipa no in the quest of ni freedom no obeka say ne media to move from court na me nko jintum I think say problematic.
It also say bro na bro no ka ho bi.
No, it is a factor.
Na
video is established say your border. Then it is a factor.
Video na and I say in some kind no. Sa video no yen ya kira na man bi say jaw na video yi mu. and the video no nsama no no gina say me na me kan
there be ye yin kire no
me ba sa video na circulate on social media no na enye ono no ye bisa ne say wo na sa video no ye o say me a na say nye me a na oji tu say me a
endru ho
It's I don't know Mujina so the no.
And Ameka said she was convicted on a hope. No say yeah the court. They say what committed criminal offense near the court. First in a court in the year. And they say you be free case and case number so and so Republic versus Kwesibochi and Agya Kwabena. Now ya can say publication of false news count 1. Publication of false news contrary to section 204 or 207 of Act 29, guilty or not guilty. But just what the American say now I can say they are guilty, no I can say not guilty. Maybe you be say no, you can't say they are guilty or not guilty, no, or say guilty. Now the question is that we should even understand what was read to her. That is the first question.
But there was an interpretation.
That's the first question.
Guilty on what?
Guilty say we publish false news and not publish false news.
What is what's brofo? Some sort of
illiterate.
And I say,
oh no,
what is the difference?
I've listened to the lawyer.
There will be an interpretation.
I've listened to the lawyer. No, as to even whether or not or the consequences of say Ojiatum so you're guilty or not you're guilty. So this is a whole legal conversation altogether. But just what the American say, ain't now right to legal representation? Are paramount, you know? Send a lawyer no. And a lawyer not actually we say in court you can say would differ a chese say never to you can say o can say wouldn't differ so say never to options are 1 year and then you can say nipa no she's been subjected to the full legal scrutiny say never year should be held accountable for court. I am not saying say and your court in was all you because lawyer
BB says you court to her.
That means they see what court when they say, and they standard procedure, and they baby say, would be for now, dibem. But yeah, it's the moon to say, okay, would be for say, never yet. Okay, so anyway, your court in the lawyer,
yeah, me educate me, Wakakra. Say, me call you know. I say, what pija de be there to baby. I the corner be pija near to me in country me. Say, Upeja so free had to see her, and Upeja and San free had to see her, and now Upeja the free had to see her. And now we will see. One more church must say, winnie, why my ye. Me different as a baby. Even can say charge near the board, not charge sheet in this one. Count now, you be kind or court. So I count and it doesn't detail offense now are committing and cast. A charge a one brim, send American, you be say. Publication of false news contrary to section 29 of Act contrary to section 207 of Act 29 guilty or not guilty. But you can't just say on so and so you publish on near video natural video
but the charge, the facts, and then your plea.
Absolutely. But the charge, the fact, you know, oftentimes the council, you know, say and yet exhaustive to what has happened. Just 1 or 2 paragraphs be penny say on this day you published a video that is contrary to the Criminal Offences Act. So video cry fan channel. To even establish say oh na video ni man na video ni me fan channel. And I make us say
anyam na me here some kasa anyam na me here.
Agya Kwabena na make us say nipa no cry no the consequences of plea no not yase ana.
Not yase.
That is what we have to examine. Entina law nature say nipa no plead guilty na say enye voluntary na say plea no of no consequence and no moment in law.
No kwase uni me pese ya de keto abi wa ha. Yenya ho kwan yenya videos bi one lawyer bi ka say dey fa uraba no ho say ebra they were the lawyers omokotwatwa je no. Enti me person ke etie de okan ye no based on that e bitumi aboya me yetumi e de enkomo no so ye pa enti prince why I ready am yenko
a lawyer for etwitwa de mami esre court senka ohun ni mo be isanse mami o ma biensa ya ba ko pra di bi lenum so ono aso sign a single mother enti ya esre court ra senka court pra no ma on fa ne nkwa fi ase nanka on fine no so nanka eno so nye na ho ensem na ho ma afufo but judge no try say ehwe ensem utiti ensem na ho kan nyina o se sa suban na amanfo ko gina social media so edi atem eye no mabone ɛyɛ no so ɛwɔ Ghana asisi ya nti ɛyɛ sɛ ɛyɛ asɛm bi ɛnɛ yɛ nsɛm na sɛ de bɛyɛ a efi na ɛkorɔ no obi a ogyina social media so ɛka nsɛm edidi atɛm ɛyɛ biribiara no ɔbɛdwene ho ahu sɛ banhwɛ yi na ɔkɔtɔ adwan no mu a wɔn nso so no yɛbɛtumi ayɛ dɛn ahwɛ wa so ne san saa ne nti no ya sra ne yɛsrɛ sɛ nka ɔma yɛ kwan na yɛ ɔmfan no na nka ɛma no nkɔ fie no court sɛ saa part wanyɛ ato nti ɔnkɔda afiase afe baako na ɛyɛ misdemeanor no sɛ wodi fo a anaasɛ wagye ato mu na nka ho asotwe no ɛyɛ between one day to 3 years 1 day to 3 years ɛna nka ɛsɛ ɛde twena so ma court no n'adwene mu no ɔsɛ yɛma no wama no afe baako ɔnkɔ afiase na ɔnkɔ di ɔne aban kɔ nti yɛhwɛ sɛ yɛbɛtumi nsa bɛka records of proceeding copy of the judgment ne ahwɛ sɛ ɛho kɔhia sɛ ɛyɛ sɛ yɛkɔyɛ appeal ɛwɔ sentence no ho a anaasɛ asotwe a court de ama no ho a yɛyɛ hesitate sɛ yɛbɛkɔkɔ appeal court
we one of the lawyers na one encentrofo bi edin komo na kwesi wutie na asem kan no se dedi kan omo pa judge ne chew se ankebe yanka on de ka na mo fa no nkoto afie se sanse or your single mother and the bucket one call only 5 years
okay maybe can not say first time
offender and nyama it is kwesi in reality you share trend social media me I'm a victim of Sanyamaniti no I know what it yes
then they say shishema
yes I'm on the swami you share trend and nyama ko say obi abetumi afa ho kwan na wafa camera desi no so na some no kan wo kwan untumi me wa no nka sane se ko
Agya Kwabena, two things. Quick one, their lawyer and the Kyle. Their lawyer and your friend mitigation of sentence. When say senior you didn't come over table with one say now what genuine form so atum. If you say be an only lawyer, be a born in the sun money at that point, the lawyer don't mean you bet my and say obey plead for a mitigation of sentence. Be a court in the person 1 year, or 3 months, and or 2 weeks. And until now, Becca or bow, you see, son your money near factors are ultimately plead say sentence, and your day. And lawyer no not on Kasa about the conviction. Because conviction there's nothing you can do about it. Because Tama lady Nankasa only lawyer Yabuna no Hodo no or can send that and son a lawyer, but don't mean can here. But Agya Kwabena on the more serious question now will be Sano. Also, me di kind Kasana. I totally disagree say ebia society be obi be fa camera didi obi atem ne ade but let's be also clear say ususu so obi didi watema your remedy is in the civil court Agya Kwabena internet defamation wo ho no obi didi watema your remedy is in the civil court your remedy doesn't lie in the criminal justice system. Enti na obete ne say obi esu obi say o say waka bibia fa ne ho tama Dr. Matthew Poku per journalist bi koka say onu na amaye twitwa cables mu Ashanti region say den no so the court few days ago me publication cry say tama Dr. Matthew Poku per or this ambition fi court na court of appeal overturning decision or something like that into obi ka say bi fa ho now to say nipa ne gu ani mass your remedy lies in a civil court, it doesn't lie in a criminal court. However, the growing pattern say a man for can send for a man for hono. E can send be a send for a man for hono. In some be I agree say criminal connotations. I agree totally. And then the law must take its course. I agree to am big can say MPP position is to be a bonia my young cochini pakrono. But your money pakrono access to the constitutional rights. For instance, legal representation. Then the pakrono friend defending and you know, I don't subscribe to those things. I don't think proper. I don't think it's proper to threaten the president's life. I don't think it's proper to threaten the vice president's life. I don't think it's proper to accuse the former vice president of murder. There's a video be accusing the former vice president Dr. Baumia of murder. Police for your money. And no okay, any amount for say the police is even being selective in matters or prosecuting matters are unprosecuted because that case or that video It's also on social media. I don't subscribe to it. Let's respect our leaders. Let's make sure say however, this is an unpopular opinion. However, so be a year president, any criminal offense. So be a year president, any criminal offense. Or because I said the president, I know the president attempt. No matter how morally it may be wrong and unjustified in our society, and I say your money and your court setting, any criminal offense, and a court are your corner, so they are a court of law. Adi any offense, no to me man any offense. Obi the president as tema any publication of false news. Say president news you say nipa no bu n'anima say we did na tema. President in the remedy lies in the civil court. Nobody should be jailed. Say we did the president at time. And then I think say wrong.
Based on atem didi no na court the jail no and now say
that's a good question.
A threat on his life no and ogina so e di man no sa sentence no.
Osha charging tia yigina so from their the lawyer back kind not in this video but in another video I'm sure say ahwefo pie hu na lawyer ne say you convicted no. Or see a man, 2 charges. The first charge had to do with the Electronic and Transactions Act. Say what transmitting information via any valid information. Now what transmitting false information. And then no say account and the judge no bogu because district court no now oni hu kwan say obey impose the accompanying sentence for that offense. And then the judge no bogu. And the second one was for the publication of false news. Publication of false news, then publication of false news, the kind. Mante, in all sincerity, Mante said the lawyer no. There was a threat of death or threat of harm.
Okay.
Unless you bet me your charge sheet, and I say be your court in the judgment, maybe near being shared, but from the lawyer naka, and then from statement in news UTV for more Munya yenya obi can say a publication of false news now.
I think it's
true. Sa charge no dey me nyanhu ye. Meaning the council no
there was this woman in one of the states America. Person kind of Oban I think no 50 years or so.
I have the
and court threatening President Donald Trump life or can be Trump on you jail 4 years or so.
Okay,
say, 6 years old.
When Trump there, but I have one from UK, Aberdeen, University worker be say MP wuye na also mamini woni come up na senko wumo. This is the information.
Yeah. When the US, it's woman no can say or can be about the threat. I mean, so can be a far President Trump who say, "Who sign a man? You jail I think 6 or 4 years."
Okay.
US so yeah sure. Hono baby a bit like I say democracy the far by hono omo jitum say bibi sa no che danye but omo take decision bi wo but to take question some more kan na kwai say much attention okwan de ma me fa so no nka say de ne fa so sa
Agya Kwabena.
Yes sir.
Say material kwasika no say nensama o kan nyina no me hu dwiri mi say kwasi na kasa say say bia na ma make reference because me aya na ye me mama but all the same no ye be fa ne sa de me meka ne say you see MPP omo I trainee I will use the word social media these days the way are almost so-called TikTokers attack mpanimfo okrom ha especially omampani na ye bonindua na ye ni say na threat of life any man you can easily see say ade a omahye that na say ye sebi rabbit dogs na yenja omungu abonten na say okawa ye be ka tell say our license in our county any criminal offense because that is what all catcher is here say so obi catcher say omampanyi munkunu ene na yire ne nemba any criminal offense because on yehwe that is what omoma yate ase but yehwe lady no issue no there has been several instances are see in the past and there are many law no you say oh this one Supreme Court has already interpreted it. Unim de enter yomo because obi the asem koi and a fasa area ne ho and per the judgment omo de ma ye no ababeye the new understanding of that part of the constitution. Eba mremu nso a omo be di aban so 8 years no enyema bi omo ye no omo ma ye hu say ye ka the first gentleman of the land ye Ghana untimi ntan ba bi ankeka de ye ode. Inti yon confo bebre ohono ma omo make statement in our view we thought say some of them cry were more lighter than the mami and I say Rabbi Kikaye. You can talk of Bulldog on a set or say omampenyon we any term. He wasn't even emphatic kukuna and say yet one ekoche we I mean appear stadium yes so did omampenyina term. He even came behind the scene to come and he came to apologize to the public. Ye won kofo bebre students cry nkwara mabawa 8 omo China SHS yes omo didi omampenya tem na asake omo. We are not talking about ordinary people. We are talking about the president of the land. Say obi say yenkuno obi say we defile nkwara and you think say sad defilement no any criminal offense for somebody to tell you say ye wa ha and I yetimete say say oh papa bi oni young girl bi akoda abusuafo ne say omo de omo fa nko court ba na straja na say Ghana police service akoje asem no na omo de court enye sa na omo ye no. So if you tell me say omampanyi hotel kunya so oni nkwara de da which means in itself is criminal. Say omampanyi betimi adify because that act of defilement ukomo embrem and say embrem ni ma ya trust say the sentence should range from 7 to 25 years or manpenny you finding it guilty so call them be say and you think that the state should not be interested in it say yenja no oh send there or kind wow and I think any issue be see wo abonten a you better say akokra bi ni obi ada hu oh mame for no busa omokra am say oh yenka because e fi asem ni ade nde nka Ghana police ne shrage ne sane mani nyina munjai because asem ne kra ne yen shada anye we. No, that is what we are saying. Media mejidi say obi so camera sin so deliberate na ni da ho and wa so camera. I had an issue at court. Na me ni obi nya small issue bi. And nipa no okansem bebre on a phone. When I went and I presented to my lawyer, I said nipa no wasn't aware of it. We can't use this. We ono na so camera ni sin so. And na oya aware say ade ameye no me wi am de beto abonten. Enti wakansem ene niema a ogidi. Ye okrom ha no mo. Ena MPP pani ba ko eyi abrante journalist si ho sa abrante we munya na munya ni sei ampa anche na obi ekuno. So should we sit down and expect say this young lady beka ena opanyi be wu ochena so wu
no you capable or sa capability no so baby be etisa
na me pese me busa eja say emrani mu no emrani mu me lawyers enim deform me nutia omo nkyira me baby a law no e kire say ofom ra na o say ehwe o capability ansa na ye de wakotuma na say ye de mra no anyway di ye nhwe say o ye 10 gram enti ye ba ne say oh nipa so mesi susu say sebi onu na akun we ni ahwe ne stature ni ahwe ne tenten ni ahwe ne muscles ni ahwe say oh we dey akwara ontumi company enti ende ye njai no is that omutimi prove bibi sa dia and that statement no mo kan no we will go by but say yes sa dia ende de ye te hakika ni nyina no and hold the water. Some people has to be made examples for others to learn. Me say utie ni audio now unhwe nwie say wa komayare obenya bi because aye time na all you know nim say wa abofro 5 years see ye krom ha na mra nya adwuma na ka wo ba kra say de obesi bi atete abofra ne kra ne say mra ya adwuma yi a o say ye hwe ni ye because akra no ye oman ne de anya wo ba keke say wa wo no enti say wo ba nantetie ne niema odi akra na efam no ebesai akra ne mana ba be ye penimbonia you yourself as a parent you have to also be charged because there are institutions to that enti unim so wo ba 5 years unim so we na wa sorry na wa fa camera si so and na wudi at I'm sure that that na ne ba ne kra no o shedem ho no mu bi na akra ne so enti very soon we wan say akra 12 years 16 years on so camera si ne so is that what we are supposed to entertain Intimidate eja me 1 year ni there me feel say e wo form
Sir.
now say nko ma no be 3 years no because the maximum say e say okoba na osua nyansa because there are a lot of rabid sebi human beings are training on mobile system nima. They are embarking on similar agenda, especially they are not attacking anybody, just any ordinary person. No. The target is the president. Charlie Yanka in Obibe Kunu and Obibe. At the end of the day, the question I'm asking myself, they say, who say nipan who ye no na unim say bibi a obeye bia no ubenya so.
Yeah, share. Doctor Kase bi say ono susu say the associate be ma no ebe yes na ho na obi nso ankwankoye bi the lawyer no kra so ka bibi lawyer no etie no so kan say judge ne say sa anamuntu ni sa ne ye no abe 1 too many so bo hu na we aso camera si no so na bra in 2024 abrantie bi ana owo so utium na I think so NDC
branch organizer
or the camera si no so na sense asem no ye die wi minum se emraba ma honkwan be yetumi ayidi a aha na ka ye nyini entiese mo ko threaten dampare former IGP or threaten former interior minister and I think the pabi owie na ejele 4 years
sure
it's a say sa ye ntwena so ye fa no kwoto afiase na obi o wa akire no ehun se emi ya ye de bekoto afiase no sa de anamotu na etuye no e di 10 krofo say wo munya biu enye no kwa na pagya man krofo ye no moyi into mami ti o ya
eja me da say eja for on a principle basis erano minim ni din and is it like me penny din hwe and on a principle basis I won't add one view to the any of the videos because so on a principle basis me hear videos so the America BIA attested on the videos because from a principle basis me hear videos having said that eja maka pay but let me start from this her conviction is on her own plea meaning I was careful to add that so I call court now jitum say my phone so you open yourself up to the sentence the full sentence until on that sense I may not be able to and I mean to anka say attention because so jitum say what forma you're open to the sentence of course if things like a suggested SMU Yabono and her right to abuse it's true there then those matters must be looked into but me person me the way jina way so it didn't come a far bigger conversation because again I thought that we hero worship them we make people who we make them heroes and which is why it's intentional on a principle basis say I won't descend to the place where I make or any person a hero but I think there are legitimate conversations out of it the values of our nation and what it means for nation building and the contribution of the internet and social media on one bit civic education may I sure say it goes to near social studies and even at time there were things around civic duty this civic what is expected from Yesubai and how Miko SS St. James Seminary I remember current head of the Bishops Council, Most Reverend Matthew Jamfi, on Sundays would have time to talk about courtesies. And courtesies for boys and girls was a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just to say, the question we should be asking is what civic education and a youth, or sorry, I'm not being a TikTok. Now, or you say now, what form of education and are they na Yema. And then for me, my interest more is on the national security part. We are forgetting that these companies are private companies. These are algorithms. In US election, there were companies seek, I think 2016 or so, that were deemed some Russian agents could influence the election based on how they could disinformation and what they could do with social media. I think probably it's time in Ghana we have a conversation around. Of course, some countries are niema na ye hwe wo krom ha no and the free access to some of the content is not available.
I'm say England,
Australia now only 16 years old. Access to social media. I think those are bigger conversations. I always say because to say no. And one say matter phone no cry say papa. And because it's clickbaiting, said you na pass the same no, wants the controversies. So we are all making them the influencers, right? Shock and awe. Inti se mitimi beka de hu pa na me beka de enim pa na me beka de maha mani pa. Enche I'll become the omaimuno me na obia bepe masem because me no obia be hu me. And because as a society we're training ourselves to create our own celebrity or influencers culture of people who create shock and awe, no, that's what you will get. So I think that the bigger conversation is to see I'm sure as a minister because you from Ramra unya 16 unya social media. Say the beba will come on one here and some no bedoso. And I say I say social media no cry no algorithm no never be or ha yeah money yeah need social media for can because of how we want to develop our country. Nya maybe na say idea be show on feed in Ghana. One here the conversations that will develop, but I think that is the conversations we need to have. Civil liberties have a part. Many have been said Udi president atema any crime. But for purposes of the record, let me read section 207, which is Emrana Yejna so a sentence around whatever her name is, right? It says any person who in any public place or any public meeting uses threatening 1, 2 abusive or 3 or insulting words or behavior with the intent to provoke a breach of the peace or whether the breach of the peace is likely to occasion shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. 3 defining words. So abusive, threatening or insulting to the extent that it has the power to breach the president that in itself is not a crime, but if your conduct including insulting, abusive or threatening to any other person in a public space that can devolve into say ebema asumdwe emba and found say a president, you are liable of a crime.
Criminal.
Oh, it's criminal.
Okay.
That's what the law says.
Okay.
It's actually criminal. Indeed, that's what I read. The question me woman say unim maka ofia pen me mi so ano say bi na me ho nye de ma no na me wo. Inti any law esiki say besi nipa no ho kwan no misusu say target me because say bi o papa bi say o wan na de anka den na obey o wi ase because say bi me nsa ntimi mbo carpenter me ntimi mbo tom me na na ayotom for ba me bo bi enye yi because me hu susa me intima no there is one of the things I protect jealously, and I think everybody should have the right to speech because yes, you will be who kwaya. One here and then now you about your session or chana ebeyeme. So, and I've said it openly, at the peril of the abuses of people's rights, I don't think speech should be criminalized in any form. And I'm one of the people who thinks that although 207, 208, I still am one of the people who thinks that the vestiges of 207 and 208 must be repealed. Because Misusu said, that's my view. Misusu said, yes, there must be responsible speech, but I think that there is other avenues a bit me see no quite done making it a criminal offense. But no said it is still in the law.
Okay.
The reasons why I say whereby or the way you way, so that they can keep. But I don't think any one of us should be fragile enough for anybody to have. If you think it's defamation or you think that it's abusive, you have other records. It's my personal view, maybe because of my own biases towards speech. I don't think Obi Kasabwa should be in any form or sense because of my own personal biases. But it doesn't mean say or mind no ni hu kwan so shishemra because e wo mra no say o threaten or abuse who di attempt to the point say it breaches the peace and what umra. So yent mean ka say the obi dey attempt in a way that threaten the peace and it's a criminal offense. The point is emra we no e was e cause one mra ni mu ana.
Yes sir.
Me imagine say for purpose of criminalizing speech we should take it. But me di we no.
Yeah.
The very fair Community Service Act you passed no just a few days ago. Me no necessarily say Agya Kwabena no 3. Me no say what could prison just to see what happens. For a woman, it doesn't matter the nature of the crime. I think that we are quick to put people in jail, custodial sentence, and I think it's something we should all try. Just go to prisons and see the nature. There are places that when they are quick, obi or prison I change, so obi that hotel or come how. So when we are speaking about those prisons near the dignity of people and the dehumanizing people, omuko jail ba omo reform you, they actually get hardened. Ye passe Community Service Act just a few weeks ago. Minister President Nyan signed here, but nothing stopped the judge in particular of saying, "Say, me sure say the crime gata bebre wo ho." Say you didn't see gata mu bosome miensa, no oti gata mu bosome miensa. It would have been far more punishment than putting her in jail for 1 year. What I'm saying is,
okay.
Values, we need a national conversation around values and I don't think that social media is helping us. We need a broader law conversation and protecting social media in those spaces.
Okay.
There are also no American say, although say Iran kasano etomra senior city no some run na si kasa boa ho no kwan no e ya ade a ye nyina e wo say ye try say be ye fi amra no mu. There are also me say American say e wo say wa form mra ne de but custodial sentence say they na go to jail me judge na nya adwen. I think say there could have been other punishment a be serve deterrent ababra sebi because our social protection only the social mechanism in our country no in the 1 year now man jail no how the 5 years will survive you have no idea.
But ya sha bibi so yes you bibi han kwan so nye ni nyina na sese yama yen wo so nim say wonim say ade am kwakoye betu de how abreme did you also thought about mofra no wo kwala no said the me ye no se me ko ha mu a me nai ombe den wo so yo wo fo no wadwene ho akwachiri saa adwene wo ma no ho ase obe ya waye afa ba ye no asotwe na ba no ewo mu se me niam bi wo ho asese me se me victim me nim se me nya boni bia but look at the way almost 2 weeks back and forth di matame mama ya wo ko no baby kro mo the next fry enti wo ye me sa no have you taken into consideration sankamina ke de ye me akabe me dana
eja me no ya adwen say sebi me started by saying say minimal running din me share videos I want to add one view to hers inti clearly sebi wa adwen ankwachi because so when him say e wo mra ni mu now you can suffer the consequences but eja the make and say oh here o man bia no sebi e de agimi for na chechere o man and oh here and the reason is that sebi ejuma bebre o man ni mu nti ye su gata ho ye su kwaye pa ejuma man ni ye e free labor yeah zoom lion obeti obi 800 cedis a month fanu kosi gata mu sa afe na fanisi gata mu afe obeti o gata mu afe obesia hu nyansa which is why I think Community Service Act in my view is one of the best laws there's in our criminal system beyond the plea bargaining probably this is one of the second reforms I think is extremely important.
Okay.
They make and say asotwe ani the man asotwe me kan say ya hunu no mombo enje asotwe ni fi no but they make and say odini ko to jailer oman no mom na ekoto aduane amanadi oman no mom na ekopa bibia amanahye yesa be bo no ho ka de bia ye sebi ye ni hu on deserve say ye be sa bo no ho ka
ono mo na so boy hoka
exactly it fanisi gata mu no gata mu 3 years
okay
sa 3 years no fanisi gata mu 3 years
okay
no sa je no akoda 1 year no it's not worth it until gomwa nyina gata mu 3 years next time obefa camera na obehu
you know once ya de besia na yi press before numbi o say me de narika betu mano na mafa mano anka boni bi enti press before amunim press bi ni bi o ha sanyu no odi aha we abasiri ni ampa enti ya de besia na mada ya wase mada kwasi so ase na mada doctor ase say omuni abre ebaye da de ka nyina ne se hwe say identity you see the word identity papa se me manie papa se me manie we manie just na we ho nkoye esanse suban bi won kwada no hunti obi apeso beben san kod feel me peso kodi agro ho gan identity ene say ye di ehuni it's so common bi so na say before bet 500 kwa twesi Ghana ni wo mu no ohun po so we ya Ghana ni esanse ya identity no ntiti ya nya ye nti na ma bi ho aye nye aso me kan wo ye omu pa say munyi bibia na edi watem politicians so na share chire
omo
politicians bi o kese manu pensa yes omo na share chire omo ni atem politicians na share chire mu wie so a that's a bibi ba mo say twa mo ho asa mu na mo different me wa you na mo ye emwa egu o manu fi egu ye ni mo ase bring a value as Ghanaians bring it down create tension bi ama adibuo eni ho ko from kwala ketekete ni atumi de omupe bia ye hwe ni ye ne de ofo sa wo na wo yo na mo benyina du ba bi wo ya wo hwe ya enye ye bio ya de besia na me de aseda ama ya boafo ne production team so ya sene e boa ya ma yetum djuma de brɛ na ansa na no ma me fa entirin kwansem ma me san be friend bra lawyer Anthony Forson Jr. say mampani ayi ni say won call Supreme Court enti bra anopa bi mo entirin kwa pa menim so wadwuma pa ena peje wadu be bia waduru no entirin kwa kase pa na me dem na anopa na menua ba ma bi ya makonta ya me kora me bibia ye na asiedu kutwi sunyane asufufu kwamuhene one papa da fam enti oyedwuma PBC enti anopai me manage dem pa enti ne papa Nana Steven Donko Asuma onyamfie dioson edwotwenson na ombedi na wohweda awasi okọ enti akonta menua madamfo kra bebe a wobia no me ma hye dem papa nyakopon adoma ye nyina beta wachi ebeye na ayefefefe
bidimo enne me papa birthday
enne
nano yawa
na wotwe
nano yawa
na wotwe twemu ye na oh okay
eja o ma 71
o ma ene utiri nkwa nti ya amfa me mra do ya nkwantare me mehwe na me mechi o meba pa da kwani na enye bato de ebi wo kwa be foso e beba nti ye be na mani tiri nkwa pa nkwa tintin ene ebisa de ma no me din de Agya Kwabena me say our identity as Ghanaians no say ayira let's bring it back na emu akra